The Louie Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the command post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your commander-in-chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Oh, man, we got a big one tonight. This is a huge show. I have never been more prepared for free agency in my life than this season because of all of the anticipation with this new group. What to expect, we don't know, which is kind of the fun of all of it, is you got to consider all the possibilities. When you know how your general manager or your head coach likes to move, it's much easier to kind of pigeonhole them, put them into a box, and kind of project what it is they're going to do. When you've got this smorgasbord of coaches and front office personnel, and all of these minds are coming together to try to help formulate what the identity of this team is going to be. As they've told us, this is going to be a collective effort. And they've told us over and over again that there's going to be synchronicity, and you're looking at it from, I think, a much wider lens now, right? The Zach Ertz move opened my mind, and I told you guys that there was a much bigger picture after the Zach Ertz move. And it changed the way that I was kind of looking at it. I was kind of, looking at it, I think, still kind of from the last regime. And I had to remember, those guys aren't here anymore. It's a new day. It's a new group. And it's a new way of thinking. And now I've readjusted. I've recalibrated my brain. And I think now we're in a position mentally, at least I am, where I can kind of better look at it and kind of figure out what's going on, or at least have a much broader perspective, if that makes any sense. So what I want to do tonight is I want to start the show off before we get into the proceedings this evening, because we got a lot to discuss. I want to start the show off by talking about the psychology, the psychological perspective of free agency from the standpoint of the player. Then we'll get into philosophical approaches, why things are done, and then we'll move into the free agents that are available or at this moment. And this is a fluid situation. We've lost options in the last 2 hours. So this is fluid. While I'm talking to you right now, somebody could be signing a deal with the team, and you could be telling me, hey, that guy just signed, right? So this is all fluid. But I want to make sure that, because, I'm a big why guy. Why is important to me. And I want to convey that message to you, because a lot of times what happens with fans is they fan, which is okay. They see a guy available, they want said player to play for their team, and they don't consider all of the different things that that player is considering. So in their mind, hey, we need to go get that guy. Well, that guy might not want you and to play for your favorite team. So let's discuss this real quick. First thing I want to talk about, the 5. I've come up with 5 main reasons why free agents make their decisions, why free agents choose specific destinations. I've come up with 5 reasons. Now, one of these reasons may be at the forefront of the decision that is ultimately made. Multiple of these decisions or multiple of these choices and reasons may be the reason why the player makes the decision that they make. Okay, so it could be a multitude of these. It could be a combination of all of these things. That's rare. And depending on where a player is in his career, certain ones take precedence over the other. But I've put them in the order in which I think they figure into the equation. So the first reason that players choose a destination is money. Why else would they choose to play somewhere? Everybody's looking to get paid. Now, again, everybody's situation is different. Not all situations are unique or alike. Some situations are unique. Not all situations are unique. A lot of times in negotiations, what organizations try to do is compare this player to another player. That's what you do in negotiations to try to give you a reference point to where to start the conversation. So they try to make it apples to apples, but it's not always the same, because one guy could be at a certain point of his career and he's already made all of his money. Now he wants to win. He hasn't won a Super Bowl. So now winning is more important than money. But if you're going into your first real big contract, your first foray into free agency, you were a second round pick or fourth round pick, you haven't made any real money yet. So you best believe that guy's trying to cash in. To hell with all of that other shit. Winning is cool. You would like to go somewhere where you can get the combination of winning and money, but money is the top reason why that guy's going to make the decision that he's going to ultimately make. If all things are equal, money is more in this opportunity over here than this opportunity. Is going to choose the place where the money is more likely than not. Again, not everybody has the same morals, right? Standards. Money is always number one until it's not. Number two is, I call it chasing, chip chasing, or winning. Okay. Chip chasing or winning. So either this player has made the money and now it's about trying to win a chip before their career is over, or they want to win. They've played for a deadbeat organization, or they've played for an organization for years that hasn't won. Now they want to taste what winning is like. And so your reputation that precedes you is going to be important to that player. And if you haven't won in a while, i.e. Washington, I'm not coming to Washington. I just came from a place that was losing. I don't want to continue that. Even though it's different and you're telling me that you're turning over a new leaf, that's cool. I still want to go somewhere where winning is already established. Or I want to go somewhere where I got a chance to win a Super Bowl. I'm chasing a chip. Time's running out. I don't have many more years left. I got to go after it while I still can. So that's number two. Number three, relationships is number three. A lot of times you played for a coach early in your career, had a great relationship with that coach. Now is an opportunity for you to get back with that coach. You're going to take that opportunity. You had your best success in your career under that coordinator. He's now a head coach. You got an opportunity to reunite with him. You're going to take that opportunity. Or this guy was your positional coach. He's now a defensive coordinator or offensive coordinator at this stop. And now you say, hey, I had a really good relationship with that guy. That's my guy. That was my position coach. We went through the fire together. Now he's got an opportunity to call plays. I want to go play for him. Relationships matter in this business. I don't have to tell you that. You know that, right? Number four, opportunity. Some guys are just looking for an opportunity, and opportunity is huge because there are so many different ways you can spin opportunity. One is, I just haven't gotten a chance to prove myself. I know I can play in this league. I was stuck behind a bunch of dudes, similar to college. You go somewhere, they're loaded at the position that you play. You can transfer or you can stick it out. Maybe an injury or two gives you an opportunity to see the field, but whatever the case may be, you're just not getting any opportunities. And so you're dying for a chance to get an opportunity to play. And so you just want somebody to give you a chance. If somebody tells you, hey, you're going to have a chance to compete, that's all you need to hear. You're signing up. Opportunity could mean, I was once a star player. I've fallen on hard times. People have given up on me. They don't think I can play at a high level anymore. A great example of that would be Shaq Leonard, right? Shaquille Leonard. 3 years ago, this guy was arguably the best linebacker in football, best middle linebacker in the game. Fast forward 3 years, and now he's going to be overlooked this free agency period. Nobody's checking for Shaq Leonard. So now he has a chip on his shoulder. Y'all don't think I can play anymore. He wants an opportunity to prove, and he'll go anywhere. Any team that will give him an opportunity to prove that he can play, he wants to prove to everyone, I can still get it done at a high level. They've written me off. Or as a wise man once said, they wrote me off, but I ain't right back. You just need an opportunity. So opportunity is big. That's number 4. And then the last one to me is sentimental value, right? So sentimental could be, I got opportunities elsewhere to make more money, but I've played 11 of my 11-year career all here in one spot, and I don't want to leave. And so there's money out there for me, but I don't want to go anywhere else. This is home, right? A great example of that is Levante David. Last year, he was a free agent. We talked about the linebackers in particular last year. He was one of them, and there was opportunities out there for him to leave. There was a lot more money out there. He didn't want it. He wasn't interested. He just wanted to come back to Tampa. That's home for him. He doesn't want to play anywhere else. Chris Cooley, if you remember, when he was forced to retire here in Washington, he could have gone to other places. He had other opportunities. He didn't want to play anywhere else. Now, he walked away from the game. Body was a little beat up. Ego was probably a little bruised. And then he got an opportunity to try out with the Giants. But as he later told us, that was just a ploy to get the guy that they ultimately wanted to sign. Like, hey, we're going to work out Chris Cooley. That forced him to make a decision. And so it worked, right? But he was being used as a pawn in the Giants, game essentially. But he didn't want to play anywhere else initially, because Washington was home. He spent his entire 9-year career here. So you get that sometimes. Or sentimental value could be, I grew up a fan of this team. My dream was to play for that team. Here's an opportunity. I'm going to take it. I've got other opportunities out there that I could pursue, but this is the one that I want because this is the one that I've always wanted. This is what I've dreamed of doing. Or my family is from Chicago. All my family lives in Chicago. I want to play closer to home. Sentimental value. I just want to be closer to my family. That's another reason too, right? So those are the 5 reasons. So you have to take that stuff into consideration when you start thinking about these free agents. Not that a lot of you care about that stuff, but I do, right? Because to me, there's a rhyme and a reason for why decisions are made. And I just like to know why. Sometimes you never find out why, but I like to draw inferences, as you know, on this channel, right? So, and then the last thing I want to bring up before we get into the particulars of tonight's show is you got to weigh 2 things when you start talking about free agency as a whole, right? And every team in the league does this, by the way. You got to weigh free agency and the positions of need that you have versus the draft and the depth and quality of players at those positions in the draft, okay? So keep that in mind. If it's a deep draft, as it is this year at offensive tackle, you're not really looking to spend a whole lot of money in free agency if you don't have to, because there's a wealth of talent waiting for you in the draft. And so it's not as big of a necessity in free agency. Good thing for us that that's the case, because there's not a lot of stuff in the tackle department that gets you excited. There's a few items there that I overlooked initially, and then when I widened the lens a bit, I saw a couple of names pop up that, okay, maybe, right? So you got to keep that in mind. If the positions aren't as deep in the draft, then it puts more of an emphasis on it in free agency, i.e. the running back position, for instance. I don't think this is a particularly super talented or deep running back draft class, but this is a really deep running back pool in free agency. So instead of So just to make it make sense, the top running back on most people's board is a guy coming off of an injury. If that doesn't tell you all you need to know, I don't know what else does, right? There's no consensus on who's the number one back because there isn't a dominant back in this year's draft. It's just a bunch of guys. Maybe one or two of them fit what you're looking for, and I'm not saying that there isn't any talent. I'm just telling you it's not needle-moving talent. I don't know. I don't think there's a Kenneth Walker III in this draft. I don't think there's a Breece Hall in this draft. Maybe there is. The likelihood is there's not. We know there's not a Jahmyr Gibbs in this draft. We know that. But there could be some really good guys in this draft. But all in all, if you need a feature back, free agency's got everything you're looking for. So you go and you be aggressive and get your guy in free agency. So I think you're going to see a lot of that. So you have to weigh your needs and the crop in free agency versus the availability of talent and depth in the draft. So those are things that you also have to take into consideration. So with that said, let's get to, I want to start with the decision to bring Zach Ertz on board, right? Some people are still debating whether it was a good idea or not. It's 1 year, $5 million for up to $5 million. Okay. He's not guaranteed $5 million with incentives. If he reaches certain landmarks, he can make $5 million. Okay. So it's a very minuscule deal. I've already warned you guys that you're going to see a lot of these, but you don't hear me though. Okay. But you don't hear me though. But as I've said already, you need veterans. The last 3 years in particular under Rivera, it's been the blind leading the blind. Not enough veterans, a lot of young guys, nobody to show them how to be pros. And so I think you're going to see a few veterans added to this roster to balance things out. And there's nothing wrong with that. And you're going to see a lot of these 1-2 year deals. I've already told you that. Guys that you aren't thinking about. I'm hoping to maybe open your mind to some of them tonight. But at the end of the day, Zach Ertz is a solid signing. I got no issues with him. We'll see what he's got left in the tank. He comes in. He bolsters a tight end position that desperately needs help. My hope is that they're not done. But even if they are, I'm still banking on the group as a whole getting better. I'm banking on guys like Amani Rodgers coming back and factoring into the mix. I haven't given up on him. I know he got injured last year. I haven't given up on him. We saw the talent. So he could be the tight end that we're looking for in the draft. He could already be on the roster. We'll see. Anyway, let's get to our first position. So I'm going to give you a bunch of names at all these positions for the most part. And I'll give you pretty much, I can rationalize why all of these guys would be in play for Washington. But I'm not going to get into the deep details and specifics of all these guys. There's just so many of them. But I'll just put these names on your brain. Put it into your consciousness, kind of talk about why they may or may not be a good fit here. And then from a financial standpoint, does it make sense for Washington? Okay. So we're going to start with edge rushers. The two positions that we need the most, edge rushers and offensive tackles, are going to be the first two positions that we talk about tonight. Edge rushers is where we'll start. I got 11 names on this list of edge rushers. Okay. So we'll start off. We're going to go in the order of least noteworthy to the most high-priced guys. All right. So guys kind of off the beaten path are going to be first, those lower level names, and then we'll work our way towards those big names, the guys that we expect to be paid, big money And some guys I'm not even going to add on the list because they're just not even in our price range, and I don't think they fit essentially where we're going. You know, case in point, Daniil Hunter. He's not coming here. I don't think they're pursuing him. One. Two, I don't even think he's entertaining here. So that's that. So I'm not even going to mention Daniil Hunter, if that makes sense. So I start with Darrell Taylor, all right? Edge rusher out of Seattle. He'll be 27 in March. This is a guy that can get after the quarterback. Very smooth athlete. Just 2 seasons ago, this dude had like 9.5 sacks, if I'm not mistaken. So this guy can get after the quarterback. I wouldn't be shocked to see him be a guy that after the dust settles and the smoke clears and all the big money is handed out, a guy like Darrell Taylor ends up getting paid a little something on the back end. Not a whole hell of a lot, but I wouldn't be shocked to see Washington double dip in this pool of edge rushers. They need at least one. I wouldn't be shocked to see them sign 2. One high level, one low level, right? So Darrell Taylor, first up on the list. 27 in March, former Seattle Seahawk. That's a name to throw in the mix. Marcus Davenport. And also keep in mind, when I'm talking about these players, what relationship do they have in terms of those 5 reasons that I talked about? For a guy like Darrell Taylor, he's looking for that number 4. He's looking for 1 and 4 in particular, okay? He's looking for money. This is his second contract. He hasn't been paid real money yet. He was not a first-round pick. So he's looking for money. So that's going to be the first objective. Who's going to pay me the most bread? If that falls through, opportunity is the other thing he's looking for. Number 4, opportunity. He needs the ability to play, to get on the field, and that's where that 1-year deal may come into play, right? I don't want to marry myself. I'm 27 years old in March, all right? This month, I turn 27 if I'm Darrell Taylor. I don't want to marry myself to a team on a low-level 3-year contract when I could go out, get an opportunity, bet on myself, have 11.5 sacks this year, and then go back to free agency next year and cash in on a 3-year deal. So that's what you're looking for if you're Washington. I think that's the mindset that we're looking for. Guys that want that 1-year deal. Guys that are looking for that 1-year, 2-year deal with a team option or with a player option, right? That's what I think Washington's looking for. And Darrell Taylor could be one of those types of players. Here's another guy that I think is in that conversation. Former first-round pick, edge rusher, Marcus Davenport, was with Minnesota last year, signed it to a 1-year deal with the Vikings last year because, like I just said, he wanted to prove himself. There wasn't a big multi-year contract for him out there after leaving New Orleans because he dealt with a number of injuries. But again, former first-round pick, high-level talent, went to Minnesota. I thought it was a great fit, opposite of Daniil Hunter. He got injured again, right? So here goes Marcus Davenport, 28 in September, back to where he was last year, wanting to prove himself to the league that he can get it done at a high level. I think another 1-year deal is in his future. Could a team like Washington be pouncing on a guy like Marcus Davenport? We'll see, right? These are the things that you think about. AJ Epineza, we played against the Bills. He had a pick 6 against us, all right? Sam threw the bitch right to him. As instead of pump faking it, he threw it, and AJ jumped in the air, snatched the bitch out of there, stiff arm Sam, and ran for a damn touchdown, right? He's going to be 26 in September. Again, when you think about those reasons, 1, he was a second-round pick. He hasn't made real money yet, so he's looking to be paid. He's coming off of a career year this year in Buffalo, finally got the opportunity, made the most of it, career highs across the board. Somebody's going to pay him good money. I honestly don't think it's going to be us. I honestly don't think it's going to be Washington, but he's in the mix, right? So keep AJ Epineza in the back of your brain, but I think he's going to get his money elsewhere from someone else. Carl Lawson. All right. He's an interesting name. New York Jets, edge rusher, has fallen on hard times, has dealt with some injuries. He went to the Jets with a lot of hype. This was a guy that left Cincinnati on a high note, getting after the quarterback, cashed in on a 3-year deal to go to the Jets, got injured after starting off hot in New York with the Jets, and they couldn't wait on him. And they went out and they drafted all these edge rushers, and ultimately he kind of was the forgotten man in New York. And so he's 29 in June. And really, I think he's another one of these dudes. It ain't about money for him right now. He's gotten paid already. Now it's about, I need to find a way to stay in the league. I need to stay relevant. He's an afterthought right now. How do I stay relevant? I need an opportunity. That's where Washington comes in. Guys like this are who I think Washington will be preying on this offseason as they look to try to rebuild this roster, right? 1-year deals, 2-year deals, guys looking for an opportunity to prove themselves, guys with a chip on their shoulder. That's who Washington will be looking for this offseason. Guys that they think are coachable, guys that they think can play at a high level. They just need to be in the right system. That's where Washington comes in. Carl Lawson is a guy that could potentially fit that mold for Washington. Again, I don't see him being the right guy. I don't like his size. He's 6'1" and some changes, an undersized edge rusher, but don't discount anybody. This next guy, I've talked about him before. I think he's a very realistic option here in Washington. One of the guys that I would put near the top of the list. Dorrance Armstrong out of Dallas, 27 years old in June. I talked about the relationships and that being the third, reason why players select a destination. He wants to be paid. That's number one. Don't get it twisted. Dorrance Armstrong was like a 4th or 5th round pick out of Kansas. So he's looking to get paid. This is his first real opportunity to get to the bag. So he's looking to get paid. Don't get it twisted. But relationships matter in this league. Nobody knows Dorrance Armstrong better than Dan Quinn does. And so, I will say this, Aiden Durde may know him a little bit better because Aiden Durde was the defensive line coach. So he coached Dorrance Armstrong in that room specifically. He's now the defensive coordinator in Seattle. So you always have to be wary of that stuff too. But Quinn, being here in Washington as the head man, will have, I think, some kind of pull in that situation. Seattle is one to keep an eye on, with Aiden Durde also being out in Seattle now as the defensive coordinator and having been in that room every single day with Dorrance Armstrong. I think there's a relationship there too. So Armstrong is one I would really consider because of the relationship. This is a guy that the last 2 years has put up 15 sacks, right? 16 sacks. He had 8.5 sacks in 2022, had 7.5 sacks last season. Okay. So this is a guy that's been getting to the quarterback each of the last 2 years, has been a really reliable guy on that defensive line for the Dallas Cowboys. I wouldn't be shocked if Washington and Dan Quinn in particular made a play for their guy. They just did it with Ertz for Cliff Kingsbury. I wouldn't be shocked if they did it here with Dorrance Armstrong. Andrew Van Ginkel. That name should ring a bell for you. I just talked about AJ Epineza having a pick 6 against us. Andrew Van Ginkel had a pick 6 against us too. Remember, there are a lot of pick 6s against us this year. So I think Sam threw the most pick 6s in the league this year. I'm now that we're doing this, I'm just like, damn, how many pick 6s did he throw? I can think of 3 in my head right now. Van Ginkel's, Epineza's. Then you had the linebacker for the Giants that picked him off and clinched that game. Were there any others? God damn, he threw a lot of pick 6s. Yeah, Dallas's corner broke the record on Thanksgiving against him with a pick 6. Shit, that's 4. Did he throw any more? 4 is enough. I don't think he threw any more than 4. Jesus. So Andrew Van Ginkel played for the Dolphins. He'll be 29 in July. Okay. He's a very agile and very diverse defender. Can stand up, can put his hand in the dirt, can move him around. I think he's one of those guys that Dan Quinn, kind of likes, hybrid players that can do multiple things. I think Andrew Van Ginkel kind of fits into that mold. So I wouldn't discount him as a guy that they could look to sign. I still don't think Andrew Van Ginkel really fits what it is we're doing here. Whatever the hell it is we're doing here, I don't think he fits into the grand scheme of things, but a guy worth mentioning nonetheless. Josh Uche. I just love saying that name because of Martin and the episode with Prince Uche. Josh Uche, New England Patriot, 26 years old in September, so a young puppy, similar to Carl Larson, very undersized. One of the reasons that he fell to the second round wasn't his athleticism, came from Michigan, had a ton of talent, but he was an undersized edge rusher. People looked at him as a tweener. What do we do with this guy? Started out like gangbusters in New England and then kind of just fell out of favor there. And so really don't know what I don't really know where he fits into the grand scheme of things. I'm not a big Josh Uche fan, but we'll see. Just another name to throw in the mix, see what happens. Here's an interesting name right here. Zadarius Smith, 32 years old in September, right? He's coming from the Cleveland Browns this year, signed a one-year deal in Cleveland and played his ass off yet again. My problem with him, not his age. He'd be the perfect fit here. If he's on one of these guys, and the next guy we're going to talk about, I think, might be one of the top targets for this team this upcoming season. Zadarius Smith, if he turns into a guy that is willing to, play on a series of one-year deals as his career winds down, similar to Ndamukong Suh. Remember, Suh was pretty much year to year. He was like a rental. If Zadarius Smith turns into that, a hired gun, essentially, he'd be interesting because he can play. He's a beast. And the problem with him is he's so good, a contending team is going to see him and say, why not Zadarius Smith? Why not? And if I'm Zadarius Smith, I'm probably chip chasing at this point. I've made good money throughout my career. Somebody's going to pay you 1 year, but they're going to pay you good for that 1 year. Even if it's a one-year deal, it's going to be 1 year, $16, $17 million, or 1 year, 12 and a half with incentives. It could get to 17 or $18 million. Like, he's going to be paid handsomely for what it is he can do for a football team. He's a game changer. So at 32 years old, I don't see him being a fit here in Washington because there will be other opportunities out there for him that give him not only the money, but also give him a chance to chase something that he doesn't currently have in his possession, and that's a championship. So I could see Zadarius Smith ending up elsewhere, but just a guy to kind of throw in there and think about, right? Here's the guy that I think is going to be high on the priority list for Washington. Jadeveon Clowney. He'll be 31, or he is 31. He turned 31 in February. Baltimore Ravens a season ago. He's coming off of arguably his best season of his career in Baltimore. He played 17 games for the first time since his third year in the league. Okay. So in his third year in the league, it was 16 games, and he played all 16. And anytime he's played every game in the season, he's gotten 9.5 sacks. Okay. He's only gotten 9.5 sacks twice. He's never hit double digits in his career. So he did it again last season, played every game, started every game, played at a high level. He's always been a dominant stopper, right? He's always been dominant against the run. His issue is, can he consistently get to the quarterback? He did that last season. And Jadeveon Clowney, much like Ndamukong Suh, and I was just talking about Zadarius Smith and whether he'll be one of those guys that's a hired gun who is settling on one-year deals for the remainder of his career. Jadeveon Clowney has already made it abundantly clear he's not trying to be tied down to any team. The man has not played for a team, maybe he's played for one team here in the last 5 years, consecutive seasons. But for the most part, it's year to year with Jadeveon Clowney, okay? It's Cleveland, it's Tennessee, it's Baltimore, it's Houston. He's been around the block quite a bit, okay? I think he's content with the one-year deal because somebody's going to pay him good money to come in and try to get after the quarterback and stop the run. If he's cool with a one-year deal, well, guess what? We're cool with a one-year deal. We need an edge rusher like Jadeveon Clowney. I would not be shocked. And again, Clowney strikes me as a guy that obviously would like to win, but I don't think winning is necessarily at the top of his list. Can I get my money and can I get my terms, my one-year deal? I think Jadeveon Clowney might actually be a fit. And a video channel says Clowney is an independent contractor. Yes, he is. That's a great way to describe him. He's an independent contractor. And we're looking for independent contractors. When you're signing guys to 1 and 2 year deals, you're looking for guys to come in and do a job for one season to help you fill a void until you can permanently fill that void. You're not going to be able to fill every void permanently this offseason in 1 year. So you're looking for guys that's going to get you by the next year. Clowney's one of those dudes. Keep him in mind. And then the last two guys on this list are the guys we've talked about ad nauseum. Jonathan Grenard is one of the guys that I've talked about, and I've said that I think he's going to be a guy that ultimately Washington targets, can stop the run. Is coming off of a career season with the Texans this past year. He'll be 27 in May. And so I think it's a really good fit. I think he's one of those guys they would consider, spending, a 3-4 year deal on for good money, right? I could see them opening up the wallet for a guy like Jonathan Grenard, 3 years, $45 million, something like that, right? And breaking him off a little something. Same with Bryce Huff. Will be 26 in April, coming from the Jets. He's a little bit different to me because he's not as good at stopping the run. He's more of a situational pass rusher. I don't know how I feel about paying a situational pass rusher. As a matter of fact, I don't feel good about paying a situational pass rusher. I can tell you how I feel. How do they feel, though, is what's important. I struggle with a guy that can't be on the field all 3 downs. I struggle with paying that guy. I don't struggle with a guy that carves out a niche for himself as a guy that can get to the quarterback. That's all fine and well. I struggle with paying that guy 3 down money when he's really just a 1 down player, right? So that's something that you'd have to consider there with Bryce Huff. So those are the 11 edge rushers. I think there's a chance that they pick 1 or 2 guys out of that pool of edge rushers. Keep in mind, all of those factors that I've talked about, money, chasing a chip or winning, relationships, opportunity, sentimental value, all of those things come into play. Keep in mind where we are. We're rebuilding. They'll tell you we're recalibrating. It's all the same, okay? We're rebuilding. So do players want to be a part of a rebuild? The guys that are looking for an opportunity don't give a shit where you are in your process. Rebuilding, chasing a championship, they don't care. They just want to play. I think those are the guys that will be circling around like vultures come the start of free agency. And maybe letting the dust settle a bit and those guys still being there, and then you start picking from that pool of players, right? We won't be heavily involved in the early activity. There may be one or two guys that they pursue early on in free agency. You're going to hear a lot of names, a lot of money being thrown about, and Washington probably won't come up initially. There'll be one or two again. Like, there'll be one or two guys that we might be rumored to, or, hey, Washington is signing this guy. But I'm telling you right now, when that big money starts flying around, when Daniil Hunter is getting the deal, or Kirk Cousins is getting the deal, or whomever is, a big free agent starts getting the deal, we won't be in that conversation. When Saquon Barkley signs, or Josh Jacobs signs, or Derek, we won't be in those conversations. Next position, offensive tackles. We started out this list with 12 guys, but that's already been trimmed to 11 with the news today that Chuks Okorafor signed a deal with New England. Like I said, we're not the only ones looking for tackles. The tackle position is a supply and demand position. Everybody needs tackles. Everybody. When I say everybody needs tackles. Okay? So you're going to have to fight for these, and it's not a lot. We fighting over table scraps here. Okay? So it could be tough. So let's go through these 11 tackles. So the first guy on the list is Yosh Nijman. Okay? Yosh Nijman, Green Bay Packer, he just turned 28 in January. So he'll be 28 all season long. Yosh Nijman is a swing tackle. Good size, can play both sides, obviously, if he's a swing tackle. Hasn't carved out a niche at either side, which is not a bad thing. What you will find is that it's hard to find young swing tackles in the NFL. You'll find an old aging veteran. I got about 5 or 6 of them on this list that are aging veteran swing tackles. You'll find those all day long, all day strong. The young swing tackle, the guy that's been a utility man that can play both right and left tackle and play them both equally solidly, those are hard to find. Because generally, if you're really good, they're going to stick you at one of those tackle positions and leave you there. So obviously, if you're getting a swing tackle, there are faults there. There are things that, but you can't, you're not going to find a perfect free agent. That doesn't exist, or else he wouldn't be a free agent. Okay. So Yosh Nijman, Aaron Rodgers once said of Yosh Nijman, in terms of him protecting him on the left side, at that time he was playing left tackle, he said, I forgot about that side of the field. Meaning Yosh Nijman was keeping it so quiet on Aaron Rodgers' blind side that he wasn't even thinking about protection breakdowns on that side of the field. He wasn't even thinking about his blind side because Yosh Nijman was holding it down. So the guy can play. So I would be very intrigued by Yosh Nijman signing as a swing tackle. He's a guy that's looking for that number 4 reason, right? An opportunity. He never really got the opportunity in Green Bay to be the guy. There was always somebody in front of him. He was always that first guy off the bench. If somebody gives him a ring and says, hey, we'll give you a chance to start at said position, he's probably going to jump at it. Throw a little bread his way, but the opportunity is probably what he cares about most. I don't know if we're going to be able to guarantee him that. I'm more interested in him as a swing tackle, not as a starter, but we'll see, right? So as I mentioned, Chuks Okorafor gone off the list, right? And remember, he was already released, so he was already a free agent, so he could negotiate, and he did before the start of free agency. Another swing tackle, Cam Fleming. He was with the Denver Broncos this year. He'll be 32 in September. That's usually what it looks like when you're getting a swing tackle. Guy that's 31, 32, 33 years old. I mean, look at Cornelius Lucas, right? That's usually what you're getting yourself into when you're talking about a swing tackle. Guy that's 31 and 32 years old, been around the block a couple of times, knows how to get it done. It isn't always pretty, but you can count on this guy in a pinch. If you need to throw him in the game, he can get it done and get you through 3/4 of a ball game, or get you through 2 to 4 weeks while your tackle nurses an injury, right? So this is a guy that can play both sides. Been in the league, been around the block. Again, he's one of those break in case of an emergency type of signings. He's not the first guy on the list, maybe not the last guy on the list, but he's near the bottom. And if you run out of options and you feel like I need a guy, he might be there after the draft, right? After free agency's first and second wave take place, after the draft, Cam Fleming may still be out on the streets. You still may be able to sign him. So you're not worried about running to Cam Fleming. He still may be there come May, right? We'll see. George Fant, 32 years old in July. Went with the Houston Texans on a one-year deal. Again, this is right up our alley, right? He's a swing tackle, athlete, former basketball player, was once like Seattle's prized, sixth offensive lineman, the guy they would line up as a tight end in their jumbo packages or their big run-heavy formations, and he would maul guys in the run game as an athlete. Also could double as a tight end because he, again, ex-basketball player, guy ran a 4.87 40 when he was coming out of the draft. So was an athlete. He's 32 years old now, not the athlete that he once was. He's been all over the place, started in Seattle, been with the Jets. Then he went from the Jets to the Houston Texans. Now he's a free agent after spending a season in Houston, and he's a guy that can play both sides. I've seen him do it admirably. I know what he's capable of. You can do a lot worse than George Fant at either left or right tackle. You don't want him necessarily starting at left. I think right tackle, he's fine. But he's gotten it done at left tackle too. At one point, he was the reason Mekhi Becton no longer was starting at left tackle, and they kicked Mekhi Becton over to right tackle. So Fant's 32 years old in July. Another guy that's an option at swing tackle. Donovan Smith is purely a left tackle, okay? He's not a swing. He doesn't play right tackle at all. He's just a left tackle. He'll be 31 in June. He's won 2 Super Bowls already, one with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, just won a Super Bowl with the Kansas City Chiefs this year. He's a free agent. I don't think money or chasing a chip is important for him. Money might be important, right? Still looking to get paid. But I think it now boils down to an opportunity. I think most people see him as like a bridge tackle. He's a means to an end. If you need to get by for a year with this guy, like the Chiefs literally needed to get by because they moved on from Orlando Brown because he wanted too much money. And they thought they had given him a fair offer. He didn't take it. So they let his ass walk. He ends up going to Cincinnati, right? So they needed a guy. They spent that money on Jawan Taylor at right tackle, but they needed somebody to get him by at left tackle for a year until they could address it. I guarantee you the Chiefs will address tackle this year, right? But they couldn't do it last year. So they went out and got Donovan Smith, and he got him through for a year. They won the Super Bowl. They're going to move on, and they're going to get themselves a tackle this year in the draft. That's my guess. So with that said, we need a tackle for a year. I feel like this is literally us going out and getting Charles Leno Jr. all over again. I want no parts of Donovan Smith. He's worse. If you ask me, he might be worse than Charles Leno Jr. That's pretty hard to do. So I'm good on him. But again, in the position that we may be in, Donovan Smith may be the answer. I hope not. But you never know, right? We'll see. I pray that they stay away from him. Josh Jones, similar to Josh Nijman, Josh Jones is a swing tackle, has played both the left and right sides very well. Very well is a strong statement. He's played them admirably in to this point of his career. Former second-round pick of the Arizona Cardinals. He spent this past year in Houston after being traded from Arizona to Houston. And so now he'll be 27 in June. This was a guy that, very athletic coming out of the University of Houston. I surmise that he's looking for an opportunity. He got a chance in Arizona to start. They shipped him off to Houston. It didn't work in Houston the way that he thought it would. He wants the chance to start. I think that's what he's looking for. I don't know if Washington's going to offer him an opportunity to do that, but I would be more than happy if they brought him in here to be the swing tackle. But again, at 27 years old, are you resigned to the fact that you're a swing tackle at 27? At 27, you're still fighting like hell to prove to everyone that you're a starting tackle in this league. You're not cool with just being a swing tackle yet. I don't think. Unless you've gotten to the point where you're just trying to survive in the league and you don't want to end up playing in the UFL, right? So I don't think he's there yet. Jermaine Illuminor was in Vegas this year. He'll be 30 in December. This is a guy that has played both left and right tackle, so he's a swing tackle, but really he's more of a right tackle by trade. And he settled into the right tackle position the last couple of years, started every single game at right tackle for the Vegas Raiders this year and actually did a solid job. So he's settling in after a bumpy start to his career. He's settling in as a right tackle that you can count on. He's an option. Again, will be 30 in December. So a name to keep an eye on. This is the guy that I think Washington will be targeting. But guess what? They won't be alone. They'll have competition. And I don't know if they will win out in a true competition. But this is a name that I've highlighted as one to watch. It's Jonah Williams, former first-round pick out of Alabama of the Cincinnati Bengals. He'll be 27 in November. He's played both left and right tackle in his career. If you remember last offseason, he requested a trade after I just talked about Orlando Brown jettisoning the Chiefs for Cincinnati after he didn't get the deal he thought he should have gotten in Kansas City. He left and went to Cincinnati off principle, right? So y'all don't want to pay me the money. I'm going to go to the team that's probably your biggest rival in the AFC right now and try to help them beat you. So he goes in and he's their new left tackle. And Jonah Williams was like, bro, that's my spot. And they was like, nah, that was your spot. We want you to play right tackle now. He's like, nah, F that. Trade me. And then cooler heads prevailed. He ended up playing right tackle for them. But I think, personally, he views himself as a left tackle. So what I think, ultimately, is if a team says, if all things are equal, two teams are willing to pay you similar money, but one team says, hey, we want you as a right tackle, and the other team says, we want you as a left tackle, I think he'll choose the team that says they'll give him a chance to play left tackle. I think mentally, he still hasn't moved on from the fact that he's a left tackle. Like, I'm a left tackle. That's what I am, and that's what he believes he is. And so I think he's searching for an opportunity to go back to the left side. If somebody's offering him that, I think he'll take that. If nobody's offering him that, then you got to fight with those other teams that view him as a right tackle, because I think he's probably more of a right tackle, to be honest with you. I think he's more of a right tackle than a left tackle. So he's not great by any means. Okay, he's not great. But I think he's a guy that has the talent, and he's young still, and I wouldn't be shocked if Washington went after him. Another guy that I think, and I got to apologize to somebody yesterday. I want to say we were on the podcast yesterday, and somebody gave me numbers on Mekhi Becton. I want to say it was Coach T. And he was throwing out like numbers for each player that he thought they would command, right? And I think he had Mekhi Becton at almost $11 million for 3 years. So it would have been like a $33 million deal, something roughly like that. $11 million per. And I was like, Mekhi Becton ain't getting that much money. You know, I think I said something like that. And it might have been a little bit more. It might have been like 12 or 13 or something like that. And I think I was thinking more along the lines of $10 million for Mekhi Becton. There is a healthy competition. I was searching the interweb. There are a lot of teams that, and again, I should have known better. I just told y'all supply and demand with the tackle position. Everybody's eyeballing your stuff. I'll tell y'all that every year, right? I'm over here looking at Mekhi Becton like, yo, he's pretty interesting. You know who else is looking at him? Everybody else that need a tackle. Everybody else that need a tackle. Cincinnati, Tennessee, every other team that need a tackle is looking at Mekhi Becton and thinking maybe he could be the answer. He's young, he's big, he's athletic, he's physical, he's everything that he has been and was as a first-round pick. Everybody thinks they've got the right staff that can get him whipped into shape. He played the most games of his NFL career last year, so he's trending in the right direction. I thought it would be a lot easier if you wanted him. No, I was wrong. I was tripping. I still think that he'll be a guy that they go after, but I don't know if they'll be able to get him. Michael Winnu. We talked about him numerous times. He's a right tackle, right? He might even be more so suited for guard. But right now, he's a right tackle by trade. And with the Patriots last year, he's played all over the place on the offensive line in his rookie contract, but settled in at the end at right tackle, which is where he came into the league at from Michigan. He'll be 27 in December, so he'll play most of the season this year at 26, so he's still relatively young. He's an interesting guy. I think there's going to be a lot of competition. As I said with Mekhi Becton, Jonah Williams, these younger guys that have established themselves as starting caliber tackles, there's going to be a lot of competition because there aren't many of these guys available. And you're going to have to beat out those other teams. And how bad do you want to pay one of these dudes to be your starting tackle is the question. I don't know how tight the purse strings are going to be for Washington. Guess we'll find out together. Trent Brown is a name that I brought up. And I only brought this name up because of a relationship. His last year in San Francisco, Trent Brown, was 2017, which coincidentally enough was the first year of our GM, Adam Peters, in San Francisco. So could there be a relationship there? I don't know. All I know is Trent Brown, he's been really good in New England and really not all that good anywhere else. He left New England for big money with the Raiders. It did not work out, went back to New England and played good football again. And they've had to put clauses in his contract to keep him from eating his way out of the league. He just doesn't seem like a guy that fits what we're trying to do here. If you got to put a contract clause in a guy's deal to stop him from getting over 370, I don't think that's the guy for you or us, I would say. But he'll be 31 in April. Just another name to consider. And then the big fish that I think everybody's going to be chasing after this offseason, I don't think he's going to be considering Washington, but I'll give you one reason, and I've already told you this, is Tyron Smith, future Hall of Famer of the Dallas Cowboys. He'll be 34 in December, so he'll be 33 pretty much the entire season for the most part. He's a left tackle already by trade. We know that. And the only reason that we're even in this discussion is because of Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. That's it. If there's no affinity, and those are defensive guys, if there's no affinity for either one of them, we don't stand a chance in that discussion because he, at this point, money is cool, and he may be looking for, the biggest payday he can get, but it's really going to come down to number two for him. He's chasing a chip, right? He's chip chasing at this point. He wants to win. That's not happening here. Not at the rate he needs it to. He's 33 years old, about to turn 34. He doesn't have time to waste. He doesn't have time for a recalibration, right? I just don't see it. The only thing that could bail us out is number three, and that's relationships. I don't think it's strong enough, personally. So those are your tackles. Those are your tackles. So I'm gonna go to a position that we're not going to talk about a lot tonight because I don't see the reason for us talking about it a ton. Wide receiver. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it tonight. I wanted to shift gears, go to something that kind of offsets those two positions we just talked about. Receiver, I've got one name. Now, keep in mind, I think there are other names out there that could be interesting for Washington. Curtis Samuel, obviously, who's a free agent here. I don't think he'll be back, but don't discount him coming back, right? Another guy that is interesting and out there that is somewhat intriguing to me is Darnell Mooney. Young, talented. I think he could be really good. We saw him when he was at his best. He looked like he was a legitimate, bona fide bottom tier 1, top tier 2 in the league. Fell on hard times because of the lack of quarterback play in Chicago over the last few years. And so his game hasn't really taken off the way that we all thought it was, but he's another guy to consider. But those aren't the guys, right? I got one guy in mind at receiver. And if you don't get that guy, if you're not interested, if that relationship isn't as strong, then you just go in the draft. To me, I don't see why you would spend your time worrying about receiver when there's so many of them in the draft and you could just get you one and not have to pay a bunch of money to do it, right? That's my thought process there. But if you love a guy and there's a relationship there, then forget about all of that. That trumps it. We just saw it with Zach Ertz, right? This is a little bit different because Zachary doesn't cost you a lot of money. This receiver is going to cost you some money, okay? The receiver in question is one Marquise Hollywood Brown. Hollywood! Obviously, the relationship in question is Cliff Kingsbury. That first year in Arizona, Cliff Kingsbury, his last year was Hollywood Brown's first year. So in essence, Cliff Kingsbury facilitated the trade to get him there, to pair him with his former college teammate, Kyler Murray, thinking that those two would rekindle the magic from college. They were on their way to doing that, and then Kyler Murray got hurt. But that season, before Murray got hurt, Hollywood Brown was trending in that direction of getting close to his career highs across the board. I think he had his second highest total of receiving yards, maybe his third, but not by much. And so he had a really productive season, in 2022. Does that relationship with him and Cliff Kingsbury really translate into him wanting to go out and get Hollywood Brown and bring him on board like he just did with Zach Ertz? Only one way to find out. That is the only guy that I would look at and say they're going to go after him in free agency because of the relationship. Cliff Kingsbury believed in him enough to go trade for him. He had a really solid season under Cliff Kingsbury, better than what he had last year. Obviously, there was a lot going on at the quarterback position, and Kyler Murray didn't come back till the latter portion of the season. But is Hollywood Brown down with Cliff Kingsbury and vice versa? And if that's the case, is there a mutual interest there? We'll see. That's the only guy that I see at the receiver position moving the needle enough for Washington to entertain dropping a couple of bucks on. Otherwise, you just go to the draft and not spend $13, $14, $15 million a year to sign a guy when you can just go in the draft and get cheap labor. That makes the most sense. All right, so now we go to another big position, safety. You know what's interesting? I've talked about this already. Safety, we've drafted a safety 4 years in a row. So you would think that it wouldn't be as big a need, but with them reshuffling the deck and kind of resetting what a safety looks like in their defensive scheme, only guy that is really truly safe that we know they really like is Quan Martin. The rest of these guys, we really can't know how they feel about them. Now, they're not going to cut them, right? They're still on rookie deals. They're inexpensive. There's no reason to move on from these guys. There's no reason to move on from Percival Butler. There's no reason to move on from Defoe, right? He's going into the last year of his deal anyway, but there's no reason to move on from any of these guys. But that doesn't mean you don't replace them in terms of looking for an upgrade over them. So with Cam Curl exiting stage left, with us potentially not bringing back Jeremy Reeves, there could be spots available on this roster at the safety position. So with that said, 19 safeties. It's a robust market. A lot of teams are eyeballing these safeties. It's going to be a healthy competition to get the one that you want. But we've seen more safeties released here over the last week and a half than any other position in the NFL. So it's made for a very robust safety market. And so let's dive in. Eddie Jackson, Chicago Bears safety, 31 years old in December, right? So again, this is part of widening the lens I talked about. Forget about age. When they went out and got Zachary Ertz, and obviously there's a relationship there, which is number 3, as I talked about those 5 main reasons, that relationship. And I don't know if y'all saw Zachary Ertz on the Pat McAfee show today, but he talked about why he chose Washington. He talked about that relationship with Cliff Kingsbury. So, and he talked about this revamped organization from top to bottom, ownership, GM, head coach. He says, I haven't worked with Dan Quinn before, but I've heard nothing but great things. He says, I've talked to a bunch of people. I haven't heard one negative thing from anybody about Dan Quinn. So there's that as well. So again, that reputation is starting to shift around the league about coming to Washington. That's a good thing. But Eddie Jackson, age doesn't matter, right? Age ain't nothing but a number, as a wise woman once told us. But the big reason why he's on this list is because he takes it away as good as any safety in football, or has throughout his career. So a guy that has ball skills, that finds himself around the football, right place, right time. In this defense, when they're preaching ball is life, just have to consider him. I think Eddie Jackson is going to be on a lot of teams' radars, and I don't necessarily know if he's a great fit for Washington in particular. I really think, and I'm going to tell you what I think Dan Quinn's looking for. Dan Quinn is looking for a hybrid safety. He's looking for a guy that can play deep if necessary, but he's really, I think, looking for a guy that can be a hybrid safety / linebacker. A guy that's big enough to look like a linebacker, but has the size and athleticism of a safety, and can, similar to Marquise Bell. We remember what he did with Marquise Bell, big 6'3" guy, 205 pounds or so, long limbs, athletic profile, throw him down in a box and let him create havoc. That's what I think they're looking for. They got a guy that can play single high safety. They got 2 guys, 3 potentially guys that can play single high safety if they want to do that. They got a bunch of guys. Quan Martin can drop over the slot if you're looking for a safety that can play free and drop over the slot and give you some production there potentially. They got stuff. I think he's looking for that hybrid safety. That's not Eddie Jackson, right? It's not Kevin Byard. He's another pure, free safety type of guy. And obviously getting towards the tail end of his career too. He's 31 years old in August. I think he is going to be unfairly criticized for his role in Philadelphia's collapse. It's tough when a guy gets traded in season and doesn't produce. And it's easy for Eagles fans to be like, oh man, he's trash. Now, you just got him. He didn't adapt fast enough to your scheme. Shit happens, right? That doesn't mean he still can't play, but he is getting up there in age, right? The best of Kevin Byard might have already come and gone, but still another name that is on this list. He may not be for us. He might be for another team. Brandon Jones is interesting. He's a guy that can come down, tackles for loss, physical around the box, athletic enough to still play underneath coverage. He can blitz. He's interesting. Former Miami Dolphin by way of Texas University of Texas. He'll be 26 in April, so he's super young. He's interesting. Fits that profile. He's like 6'1" or so, 6'1", 6'2", somewhere in that neighborhood, 6 feet to 6'2", somewhere in that neighborhood. fits the DNA profile of what I think, and I don't know this, but I'm going off of the past. I'm thinking about, so let me tell you what I'm thinking about. Let me tell you what I'm thinking about. When I'm thinking about the safety, because we got a bunch of safeties already here on the roster, but none of them are like Jaron Kearse. When I'm thinking about safety and what Dan Quinn is looking for, I'm thinking he's looking for a guy in the mold of a Jaron Kearse. He's talked about Jaron Kearse 3 or 4 times unsolicited, right? When they keep asking him about certain players and, you know, flexibility and guys that offer you versatility, he keeps bringing up Jaron Kearse. We asked Jaron Kearse to do so many things. We asked him to do this, that. We asked him to blitz. We asked him to be a guy that came down, fill the alley. We asked him a guy underneath coverage. We asked him to do this. And Jaron Kearse is like 6'3". He's like 215 pounds. You know, isn't the fastest guy in the world, but he's physical. He's smart. He's instinctual. That's what I think they're looking for. Size, physicality, ball skills, all of that good stuff. That's what they're looking for. Brandon Jones gives you a little bit of that. Speaking of Jaron Kearse, guess who's available? You guessed it. Jaron Kearse will be 30 years old, or just turned 30 in February, rather. So 30 years old. We just saw it with Zachary Ertz, so we know that they're not afraid to go pull a guy that they're familiar with, regardless of age, and bring him onto the squad. I wouldn't be shocked. He's talked about Jaron Kearse a ton. I think you can find a guy that is better than Jaron Kearse, but offers you everything that he offered you. But there's something to be said about that comfort level of a guy knowing your expectations, knowing how Joe Witt Jr. coaches. Remember, Joe Witt Jr. said, this ain't for everybody. This ain't for everybody. And Jaron Kearse knows that. And so there could be mutual interest between the two parties. Obviously, you know Jaron Kearse gets down with Joe Witt Jr. and Dan Quinn. You know that. So he might want to follow his boys to DC if they still are interested in bringing him on board. I just remember him talking shit. It was 2 years ago when they came here. I want to say, I don't want to say. I know it was the year 2021 when we scratched and clawed our way back to 6-6, and the Cowboys were the first of 5 straight games against divisional opponents. And they were coming to Washington, and they came in here and they blitzed us. I mean, they jumped our ass, knocked Heineke out of the game. I mean, before you could blink, I think the score might have been like 18-0. They were beating the shit out of us. But we hung in there. They weren't killing us the way that they should have, because the score didn't indicate how badly we were getting our asses handed to us. And then remember, I want to think it got to 18-0, and then it ultimately got to like 21-7. And then Cole, the hell's the name of the damn linebacker? Why am I forgetting his name? He had a pick 6 against that, and we were down a score. And then we got a stop, and then we had a chance to tie it up, and Kyle Allen came in the game, and he throws a dime to DeAndre Carter down the sideline, and he dropped it. And then, you know, after that, everything fell apart, and they ended up beating us. Cole Holcomb. Thank you, Christopher Olsen. Cole Holcomb had the pick 6 against Dak, cut it to a 1-score game. But I remember, only reason I bring that game up is because I remember the sound effects track of that game, and Jaron Kearse was talking shit to our fans on the sidelines, and they picked it up on the mic and they played it. And I just remember I hated him after that. Like, you bitch. It would be ironic if he ended up playing for us now, but that's the only reason I brought it up. Anyway, Micah Hyde was released by the Buffalo Bills. I don't see him being the answer here. He's going to be 34 years old in December. Yikes. But I told you, I've widened my lens, okay? I'm not sleeping on any age guys anymore. There's no more ageism taking place here after the signing of Zachary Ertz. Again, Ertz had a reason, though. There was a relationship. There's no relationship with Micah Hyde. Unless I go back in the Rolodex, and I think, follow me here, Micah Hyde started his career in Green Bay. He was drafted by the Packers. Joe Witt Jr. was in Green Bay, I think, at the time when he was drafted, and coached him for the first 2, 3, 4 years of his career before he left for Buffalo. So there could be, y'all can fact check me on this. I'm just going into the mental Rolodex now that I'm thinking about it. It's so long ago, so I don't know if the timeline matches up. But I remember Joe Witt Jr. was with Green Bay for a very long time, and I think him and Micah Hyde overlap. That's a long time ago, though, man. And so even if they did overlap, is that a strong enough relationship 8, 9 years later to want to go play for him in Washington? Maybe. Just throwing it out there. That just came to my head, so maybe that makes sense. Let's see. This is the guy. You know how it goes. That's him. That's the guy, right? That's the guy. This is the guy right here. All right. This is the guy that I think we should pursue, and I will be shocked if they don't go after with real vigor. Jeremy Chin. Former second, I believe, round pick for the Carolina Panthers. He just turned 26 years old in February. I don't think he's going to cost as much, right? So I think he's in your wheelhouse financially, even though we're not broke, but we're going to operate like we broke, I think. Just because you got it don't mean you got to spend it, okay? They're going to spend it because we need so many guys. I think they're going to spread it out. Jeremy Chin, to me, is Jaron Kearse with rocket boosters, with athleticism, right? That's the difference. That's why I think he's a new model of Jaron Kearse. Jeremy Chin is 6'2", 6'3". Jaron Kearse, I think, is 6'4", but follow me here. 6'2", 6'3". Jeremy Chin is like 220, 215, 220. He's a big boy. Jeremy Chin runs a sub 4.5 40. Jaron Kearse ran like a 4.7, which is why he's dropped like a rock in the draft. He ran slow as molasses. Jeremy Chin is physical. He'll hit you. He can blitz. He can take it away. He does a little bit of everything. And the only reason he is even available is because the defensive coordinator in Carolina, Ajiro Evero, didn't like Jeremy Chin. They didn't mix. He didn't fit his scheme for whatever reason. I can't say why, but he didn't fit. One man's trash is another man's treasure. And that's why he's out of favor in Carolina. He was one of the core pieces in Carolina just 2 years ago before Ajiro Evero got there. Evero came in, Chin didn't fit, and his playing time dwindled. This is the guy. Right here. This is the guy. This is him. That's him. Jeremy Chin. He's the guy. Go get him. That's the guy I'm eyeballing. Hard. That's the guy right there. That's him. We'll see if they agree with me. Think he fits what Dan Quinn is looking for to a T. Mike Edwards. I don't think he fits what Dan Quinn is looking for, but he's an undersized safety. He's like 5'9", 5'10". He's a winner. Won a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay with the Buccaneers, won a Super Bowl in Kansas City this year, and he's a ball hawk. Wherever he goes, the ball seems to follow him. He's a magnet. Fumbles, interceptions, tips, they all find him. So he'll be 28 in May. He's another one of those dudes that I wouldn't sleep on, but I don't think he's what they're looking for. But again, anybody that produces turnovers, you got to consider them for Washington because they're looking for guys to transform this defense into one that takes it away. Mike Edwards is one of those dudes that takes it away. So Darnell Savage is the next guy on this list. I think one, he's out of our price range. Not that we truly have one, but I think he's out of our price range. Two, I think he is going to look for a contending team, a combination of getting paid and a contending team. I think he can get good money and still find a program that is on track to win a Super Bowl. And if you can find those two things in concert with one another, why would you even consider a place like Washington? First of all, I think Green Bay still wants him back, and I wouldn't be shocked to see him go back to Green Bay. That's probably his first destination is back to Green Bay. But after that, there are a bevy of teams out there, okay? Dallas. The Bills just moved on from both of their safeties. They're going to have some cap space because they're freeing up cap space, right? I can go on and on. Philadelphia, moved on from Kevin Byard, and, they're going to have some cap space to play around with. And I can go on and on and on. They're going to be a bunch of suitors for a guy like Darnell Savage. We don't even compete. So I'm not even going to waste my time. I'm just going to move on to the next guy. He'll be 27 in July, if you care. C.J. Gardner-Johnson. He's one of these dudes. You know what he reminds me of? You know what C.J. Gardner-Johnson reminds me of? Remember for years, there were many in this fan base that wanted Quan Alexander. And I kept saying, man, Quan Alexander, like 40 years old. What you want with him? He done dealt with injuries. He done took a couple of spins around the block. And then they were like, what are you talking about? Quan Alexander's 27. I'm like, no, he's not. I'm not going to look it up. And Quan Alexander feels like he's been in the league forever. Or as a wise woman once said, forever. C.J. Gardner-Johnson feels like he's been in the league forever. Man is only 26. He'll be 27 in December. I'm like, well, damn. That changes things. Now, he's a ball magnet, as we know, and had a tremendous season in Philadelphia that one year when they traded for him. He was really good with the Saints. Had a down year last year. He balked at the money in the contract the Eagles offered him. Thought he could get more on the market. It ended up not working out for him. So what did he have to do? He had to settle for a one-year deal. And he went to Detroit, got injured. And so he really didn't get to play the kind of ball that he normally is capable of playing. But then we saw him in the playoff game. He talked shit to Baker Mayfield. And then what did he do? He picked Baker's ass off on the first possession of the game and tossed him the ball, right? So he's about that life. He's a shit talker, and he's a shit talker who walks with that shit talk. So he's interesting. Don't discount C.J. Gardner-Johnson. I wouldn't do that if I was you. And being that he was in the division 2 years ago, and Quinn got to see him up close and personal, Joe Witt Jr. got to see him up close and personal, and they know what he's capable of, I wouldn't discount C.J. Gardner-Johnson at all. All right. Jordan Whitehead is another guy that feels a little bit older than what he really is. He feels somewhat old to me, but he's not. He'll be 27 in July, or 27 in March. So he turns 27 this month. Won a Super Bowl with the Buccaneers a few years back. So I don't know if the chasing a chip or winning is as important as it once was to him. It's about money and maybe opportunity to continue to be a starting safety in this league. Somebody's going to give it to him. I don't think it's us. I don't think we're the right team for him. I don't think he fits the profile of what they're looking for at the safety position. So Jordan Fuller is a guy that I think fits a little bit more of the DNA profile of what they might be looking for. Dan Quinn might be looking for. This is a guy out of Ohio State that was a 7th round pick, afterthought coming out of Ohio State. Rams scooped him up, and this is what the Rams have done better than just about any other team because they've traded away all their first-round picks. They don't give a shit about a first-round pick. What's the first-round pick? That's what the Rams are asking. Shit, what's the second-round pick? What you talking about? We don't get busy till the 3rd round start. What you talking about? But they found 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round gems, right? Undrafted gems. And they coach it up like nobody's business. And Fuller was one of those dudes. They did the same thing with Taylor Rapp, who just got a deal. He was on this list and scratched him off before, I finalized the list because he signed the deal with Buffalo to stay with the Bills, right? So they've done a really good job of coaching these dudes up. Fuller is one of those guys. Tall, physical, plays around the line of scrimmage, doesn't miss tackles, has some ball production, had, I think, 3 or 4 interceptions this past year. So he can make plays on the football, has that versatility that I talked about. Don't discount Jordan Fuller, right? Turns 26 or he's already turned 26 this month. So don't discount Jordan Fuller. That's all I'll say. Don't discount Jordan Fuller. Julian Blackmon, former Indianapolis Colt, turns 26 in August, so he's a young dude. I liked him coming out of Utah and started out his career actually really good with the Colts. Then he had a significant injury, missed almost an entire season. I think he might have played the first 2 or 3 games and then missed the rest of the season with like an ACL or Achilles. I think it was an ACL. Came back the last 2 years, played solid ball. He does a lot of things well. I don't know if he does anything good enough, and I don't think he's big enough to play down around the line of scrimmage. But he's another guy, young, another guy to consider. Geno Stone, I just assume, and I think Jadeveon Clowney is another guy to assume this with. I just assume anybody that's coming from Baltimore's defense, just assume until otherwise notified they go into Seattle. That's what I'm doing, is mentally saying they're going to follow their guy to Seattle. Now, obviously, Seattle can't pay everybody, but I'm thinking about Clowney. I'm thinking about Geno Stone, who's not going to cost as much. I'm thinking about Patrick Queen. Any of those dudes, anybody from Baltimore with any profile on that defense that's a free agent, I'm thinking they're heading straight to Seattle. That's my mindset. Again, relationships. Now, money is first, but if you can couple money with that relationship, guy that knows me, knows how to utilize me, get the most out of me, and they're going to pay me, what's there to think about? So, again, I'm looking at Geno Stone. I'm not buying what Geno Stone is selling. And he was one of the worst tackling safeties in the NFL last year. So I'm good. I'm going to pass. But he had 8 interceptions last year. I didn't stutter. He had 8 interceptions last year. So there's that. Xavier McKinney. We've talked about him before. He is a target that I think makes a lot of sense for a lot of teams. We're not the only ones. And I think if you want Xavier McKinney, you got to get into a bidding war. And I don't think Washington is going to be comfortable getting into a bidding war for the services of Xavier McKinney. The Eagles are interested in him. They've already made it clear that they're interested in him. There are a number of teams who are interested in Xavier McKinney. And what you've got to understand is there was this question like, okay, why didn't you transition tag Xavier McKinney if you're the Giants? And they said, because we don't think we're going to be able to match the deal that he gets. And if you transition tag a player, they sign a deal, you got 5 days to match that deal, or else that deal that they've signed, that offer sheet, turns into an actual contract, and then they're gone. If you transition tag a player and you don't match that deal, you don't get compensation towards a comp pick, right? So you don't get compensation towards a compensatory pick for that. So you lose twice. if you slap a transition tag on a dude and don't match. So if you're going to slap a transition tag on a player, you better be prepared to match. And they know that Xavier McKinney is going to get broken off. And Xavier McKinney already said, I want to be the highest paid player at my position. Well, that's money. That's at the top of the list, my friends. I don't think we going there. I just don't. Not for a safety. Not when you could probably find one in the draft. Not when there are other options. This safety market is oversaturated. But what it's not going to be is oversaturated for the big names. But it's oversaturated for guys like Jeremy Chin and Javon Curse, or Jaron Curse, excuse me, and Mike Edwards. It's oversaturated for them. It ain't going to be oversaturated for Xavier McKinney or Justin Simmons or guys like that. Big name dudes? No, they're going to find work. It's going to be teams in line fighting each other to get to these dudes. But I don't see Washington standing in line fighting teams to get to Xavier McKinney. I just don't see it. So while he sounds good, I don't see it happening. So we'll see what happens. Cam Curl, he gone. I bring him up because anything could happen. Seems like he's going to end up elsewhere. But as I mentioned, it's a lot of big names out here. Cam Curl might have lost more over the last 48 hours than any of these safeties, because had the market been what it was, somebody was going to overpay for Cam Curl. But now with guys like Justin Simmons and Micah Hyde and all of these big names and Jamal Adams, Rayshon Jenkins, and some of these guys that have entered the market, it's just more names for other teams to consider. And it's going to hurt a guy like Cam Curl's market, I think, because he's not taking it away. So I don't think he's going to get what he thinks he's going to get, and that may lead to him coming back home. You just never know. You just never know, right? I'm just telling y'all, don't rule out a Cam Curl reunion. It seems highly unlikely right now, but this is an oversaturated market for guys like Cam Curl. Again, it's not oversaturated for Xavier McKinney. It's not oversaturated for a guy like Justin Simmons. While teams could say, hey, either you come to my price or I'm going to just go out here and go get Geno Stone. Guess what Xavier McKinney says? Okay, kill your ass. Because there's somebody out here that's going to pay me, bro. I'm not hurting for options. So if you want to be cheap, then you go ahead and find you somebody else. Justin Simmons can play that same game. Cam Curl can't play that game. All right? Jaron Curse can't play that game. Mike Edwards and Jordan Whitehead can't play that game. They don't have that same leverage. They don't have that same pedigree. So it's a little different. So Cam Curl could end up back in Washington. I'm just saying, I'm not saying, right? Kyle Duggar, transition tag was slapped on him in New England. I think they're going to match any deal. Again, you don't slap a transition tag on a dude that you don't have. You don't slap a transition tag on a guy unless you plan on re-signing. You matching any deal that he gets, any offer sheet that he gets. I think they're going to match any offer sheet that he wants to get. So Jamal Adams. We talked about him when he got released. I don't know if I talked about him on the podcast or one of these Washington shows, but we'll discuss him quickly. He'll be 29 in October. I told you he's a bit of a head case, but you say what you want about Jamal Adams. The problem with him has been health of late. That's been his biggest bugaboo, is he can't stay on the damn field, whether it's ankle or it's a concussion. But he's a head case now. But dude's talented, and in a Dan Quinn scheme, they could conjure up some shit for him to do. He's a hell of a blitzer. He's fast as hell. He's got ball skills. He's physical as hell. There's a lot they can do with a guy like Jamal Adams. So I wouldn't rule him out. And Adams may have some suitors, but I think his market might have cooled a bit. You know, I don't think his stock is as high as it was, say, 2-3 years ago. Remember, the Seahawks gave up like 2 first-round picks for this dude, which is crazy when you think about it for a safety. We'll see what kind of market develops for him. I wouldn't rule him out as an option here in Washington. Wouldn't rule him out at all. Rayshawn Jenkins is another dude I wouldn't rule out here in Washington. Big body, 6'2" dude, can run a little bit, physical as the day is long. Man had, I don't think he had a big year interception-wise, but he tackles well, physical, can play the football. I think he had an interception last year, just one though. I think he just turned 30 in January, so you know, something to think about. But and then there's Justin Simmons, and I've seen a lot of stuff coming from Washington fans, and this is the thing that we do the best. I think of every fan base does this. We're not the only one, so I don't want to single out Washington fans like we're the only fan base that does this, but we do this, I think, better than anybody else. A guy is made available, and Washington fans lose their mind. Hey, go get this guy. We gotta get this guy. Justin Simmons is an all-pro, Pro Bowl safety, multiple All-Pros, multiple Pro Bowls. Okay, the man is a turnover stud. Okay, most interceptions of any player in the league over the last 4 seasons. He's never had a season in his career. Listen to this. He's never had a season in his career where he's had less than 2 interceptions. Okay, he's either had 2 interceptions or more than that every single year of his career. I don't think Cam Curl has 2 interceptions in his entire career. This man's never had a season with less than 2. So what I'm telling you is, even though he'll be 31 in November, there's a lot of good football left in Justin Simmons. A lot of good football. And there's going to be a lot of teams. And I was on the old interweb looking around, and every team that needs a safety was like, yo, we got to go get Justin Simmons. The Lions. I mean, we talking about Super Bowl contending teams here. The Packers, the Lions, the 49ers. These are the teams that are like, yo, Justin Simmons is available. The Eagles. So I'm bringing this up because do you really think Justin Simmons, with all these options out there, with all these available spots, you really think he would say, nah, man, I'm going to go to Washington, man. I like what they doing out there. Come on, bro. Justin Simmons, we don't have a shot in hell of getting Justin Simmons. And you know, I've been talking about Justin Simmons for like 5 years. You know, I love Justin Simmons. It ain't happening, bro. Who are we kidding? I mean, it's not even something to talk about. I've spent more time talking about this now than I should have, because I know it's not happening, and you know it's not happening. And Mega said, Mega, I got a single Mega out right here, because somebody sent this to me on Twitter, right? And I swear I wanted to go off on this person, but I was like, this person means well, okay? So Simmons said off to DC on his Twitter too, right? And Emmanuel says he's from VA. He is from VA, but guess what? Go look at when that tweet was sent out. That tweet is from 2018, bro. This is the shit I'm talking about. Y'all just be out here retweeting stuff, sharing shit. Don't even pay attention. Like, y'all don't pay attention to remind me to never do a crime with none of y'all, because y'all definitely getting us caught. There's the finest granular details in things, and y'all just oblivious to that shit. Y'all don't pay attention to nothing. If I would go in my mom's room to sneak something, I would make sure that even to the smallest detail, like if the label is facing outward, I'm going to make sure when I put it back, the label is facing outward. Y'all don't be paying attention to nothing. Y'all just be out here reckless in these streets, man. The man ain't coming to DC, and he's from this area, by the way. He's from Northern Virginia. But that tweet was from like 2018, bro. What are we doing right now? Y'all cut y'all foolishness out, okay? Anyway, I digress. So those are the safeties. It's 19 of them. There are options available. I've already told you the one that I want. And I think he'll be in our wheelhouse. We're not going to be the only ones eyeballing Jeremy Chinn because just like I said, it's a lot of teams that know good and damn well they're not getting Justin Simmons. They're not getting Xavier McKinney. They're not getting Jamal Adams. They know that. And so you know what they're going to do? They're going to go straight to the second tier or the third tier to go get their guy. We need to do that. Don't waste your time with those frontline dudes. Go straight to the Jeremy Chinn aisle and scoop him up. Put him in the cart. That's what I would do. Anyway, I digress. So, running backs. I expect Adam Peters to find the third running back on this roster via the draft. I'm not even going to entertain. It's a deep class of running backs. I just don't think any of them end up here. And looking at his track record, Adam Peters has always been a guy, or the 49ers, can't say because he's never been his own guy, but as an assistant, he's been a part of staffs who have found good running backs in the mid to later rounds. I don't see them, whether it's Mason or it was Elijah, whatever his name is, Elijah Mitchell. They drafted, now this one didn't work out, but they drafted Trey Sermon. They drafted Davis Price, which I think Washington wanted him, and they drafted him like around probably sooner than Washington was willing to take him. He went in the third. I think Washington wanted him in the fourth round. So they've always drafted backs in San Francisco. I think that's what he's going to do. I don't see him as a guy that likes to spend real money on a back. Christian McCaffrey was the exception to the rule. I think they're going to find a back in the draft. That's what I think. So I'm not even going to talk about the running back position because I don't see it happening. All right. So then we move on to the next position. All right. So linebackers is the next position. 16 of these things that we need, right? 16 of these things. Or 16 linebackers that I'm going to mention tonight. We need at least one. I wouldn't be shocked if they got two. There's some backers in this draft that I'm intrigued by. So we'll see what happens. Isaiah Simmons is up first, and I don't think he's going to cost you a lot of money. You know why? I think he's at number 4 right now. Because of how his career has started, he was a first-round pick, so he's made a little bit of money, right? And he was a top 10 pick at that. But here's the interesting thing. He's going to want money. Every player does. But how is he viewed around the league? Are there a bunch of teams that look at Isaiah Simmons and are salivating at the chance to get him on their roster and work with him? Or is he viewed as a guy that's sort of an enigma? I'm good on him. Where does he stand right now? I feel like he's like Devin White in a sense, in this same linebacker conversation. Like, where do we put him? We know the talent is there, former top 10 pick. In the case of Devin White, former top 5 pick. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Isaiah Simmons went 7th overall. Like, these are high-level first-round top 10 draft choices. Usually those guys have a market when they become available the first time around. So I don't think you're going to be able to get Isaiah Simmons for super cheap, but I don't think it's going to be this robust market. But, all it takes is one team to be fiended up, right? Fiended up for him, and he's gone, right? He'll be 26 in July. He's young. He's athletic. He's a long-limbed defender. These are all qualities that Dan Quinn is looking for. To me, Isaiah Simmons is a perfect fit for a Dan Quinn, Joe Witt coach defense. These are the types of players. He's a bigger, faster Marquise Bell. Now, we've heard, and this is the thing, and this is why he's here. This is why he's available. This is the problem. We've heard he's a loafer. The attention to detail isn't there. You're not always getting 100% maximum effort out of him. This defense ain't for everybody. I don't know if it's for Isaiah Simmons either. We'll see. Shaq Leonard. I talked about him as an example earlier. He feels old as hell, but he'll be 29 in July, right? So he's still got football left in him. Here's the problem with him is he's dealt with some injuries over, the life of his career, the last couple of years in particular. And it seems like he hasn't returned to form since some of those injuries. And he fell out of favor in Indianapolis. He ended up in Philadelphia. It didn't work out there. And I'm hoping that, not just because of him, having a chance to end up here, I'm just hoping he resurrects his career, right? And he seems like a guy that is self-motivated, that will go to great lengths to prove to everybody that I'm not washed and y'all were wrong about me. Just like y'all were wrong about me when I got drafted in the second round and I was really a first-round linebacker. He seems like the kind of guy that'll go, bust his ass this offseason, get into tip-top shape, and whomever signs him is getting the Shaq Leonard of 3 years ago. He strikes me as that kind of a guy. But till that happens, you got to go off what we've seen lately, and the last 2 years haven't been pretty for Shaq Leonard. So I don't know if there's going to be a big market for him or not. Sione Takitaki will be 29 in June, linebacker from the Cleveland Browns. I think this is a guy that's looking for an opportunity. He played a lot in Cleveland, and he's proven that he can play in this league and be more than serviceable. And so I might be undervaluing him as a starter, but clearly he's going to want to be paid. But guys like him don't get broken off in the open market. I mean, we watched guys that we thought highly of last year, in Long Jr. and Azeez Al-Shire. We watched these guys get minimal dollars in free agency. So Sione Takitaki isn't going to get broken off. We need multiple linebackers. Is it a stretch to think that a guy like Sione Takitaki can end up in Washington? No, it's not a stretch. It's not a stretch at all. Oren Burks will be 29 in March. Here's what you need to keep in mind. He's coming from San Francisco. I don't really need to say much more than that. There's a relationship there, clearly, with Adam Peters. He's a core special teamer, one of the better special teamers in the NFL. So that's going to raise his value. And if you're not going to bring back, and we can't say that they're not going to, but I wouldn't be shocked if they didn't. If you're not going to bring back Jeremy Reeves, then you need a new fiend. Oren Burks could fit multiple roles for you as a backup linebacker and one of your, better special teams players. So something to consider there. And there's a relationship. And you're not going to have to pay a whole hell of a lot to get a quality linebacker who offers you versatility as a special teams player and a backup linebacker. Tyrell Dodson ended up starting for the Bills this year due to all the injuries at the linebacker position. He'll be 26 in June. He's more of a physical, smart linebacker who gives off field general vibes. We'll talk about another guy that kind of gives off those vibes. Dotson's interesting because he can run a little bit, but he's so undersized. I don't think he fits. Dan Quinn really likes his linebackers to be long-limbed, 6'3", like KJ Wright. What is he, 6'3", with long-ass arms? Bobby Wagner, what is he, 6'1", 6 feet, 6'1", 6'2"? Like, can run, got some size. Like, those are the kind of guys. Leighton Vander Esch, 6'3", 6'4". Like, that's why Peyton Wilson makes a ton of sense in the draft, but we're not talking about the draft right now. Anyway, I don't see Dotson fitting in for that reason. He's like a 6-foot guy, 5'11", 6 feet. Smaller linebacker. Willie Gay Jr., Kansas City Chiefs, turned 26 in February. So, he's an athletic freak at the linebacker position. But we got one of those already in Jamin Davis. So, do you need another one? I don't know. His game is very similar to that of Jamin Davis. So I don't know if you need duplicates of that or not. So that's kind of what turned me off to Willie Gay. Is like, we got one of those dudes. Now, Willie's a little bit more instinctual than Jamin Davis is. I'll give him that. But if Jamin were no longer on the roster, I'd say go after Willie Gay Jr. But Jamin's still here. So I don't see Willie Gay being a fit here. But, you never know. Drew Tranquil just won a Super Bowl with the Chiefs this year. He'll be 29 in August. He checks off a lot of boxes for guys that kind of fit the Dan Quinn mold on defense. He looks the part at the linebacker position. We'll see. He's got the size. He's got the speed. He's got the awareness. He's got the ability to make plays, both sides of the line of scrimmage. There's a lot to like there. He was a guy that I think he overrated his market last year and had to settle for the 1-year deal with Kansas City. Maybe something similar happens this year and he has to settle for another 1-year deal. I think he wants to go back to Kansas City, though. And if all else fails, I think the Chiefs are interested in having him back, and I think he'd like to return. So I don't see him leaving Kansas City for a place like Washington, especially if he's got to settle for a 1-year deal. He might as well go back to Kansas City with that 1-year deal. Here's a name to keep in mind that's a needle mover potentially. Blake Cashman. He's going to be 28 in May. He checks off a lot of boxes. And here's the thing that he does that Dan Quinn has talked about a ton. Linebackers that can get to the quarterback. He talked about Jamin Davis and wanting to watch tape to see if he could get to the quarterback. We know he likes to blitz. We know he likes to do multiple things with guys. We talked about that with the safeties that can play backer, with the backers that can get after the quarterback. He likes guys to be multiple because that stops offensive coordinators from knowing what's coming. When guys can do multiple things, it gives you more options defensively. So with that said, a guy like Blake Cashman who can get to the quarterback is very interesting, to say the least. He just had his best year of his career under a former NFL linebacker, in Houston as the head coach. In DeMeco Ryans. So the question then becomes, would he want to leave? And do the Texans have interest in bringing him back? And is there mutual interest? I would think there is. I'd be shocked if he doesn't go back to Houston, but I've also read that he's very excited about free agency and this opportunity. He may not get another opportunity like this to hit the market and get paid. And so I think he's going to explore all options. He's one of those dudes that kind of fits. 4'5", 40 guy, size, physicality, had that pick in the playoff game. Was it him? Or that might have been Christian, the Alabama linebacker. But nonetheless, this guy's good. Keep your eye on Blake Cashman. I'll just say that. Josie Jewell. The thing Washington has been missing is a field general. Josie Jewell is a field general. Green dot guy, gets everybody lined up. Not the best athlete in the world, but he's where he's supposed to be, when he's supposed to be there. He doesn't miss tackles, et cetera, et cetera. He'll be 30 in December. Just a name to mention if you're looking for a field general. I don't think they're looking for a field general. We haven't had a field general since London Fletcher. So it's just something to bring up, but I don't think they're looking for that kind of linebacker. Devin White, we've talked about him ad nauseum, will be 26 or just turned 26, in February. We already know what it is. We're not the only ones eyeballing Devin White. We're not the only ones looking at him and thinking that this guy's got enormous potential. He'd be the perfect fit in a Dan Quinn coach defense. But again, does he end up here? That's the question we got to ask ourselves. Azeez Al-Shire, we talked about him already. He'll be 27 in August. He's got a relationship. He's coming from Tennessee, but we all know him from San Francisco. Got a relationship with Adam Peters, another one of those late-round gems. Was he a late-round gem or an undrafted guy? One of the two. And so there's a relationship there, which is how he ended up in Tennessee. Rand Carthen was one of the front office personnel guys that got the GM job in Tennessee. So he reached back and grabbed Azeez Al-Shire. I could see Adam Peters doing the same thing in free agency. So don't discount Azeez Al-Shire. Again, relationships, that's that number 3. And he's looking to get paid. He signed a 1-year deal in Tennessee. He's still looking for that, life-changing deal, that 3-year, $27 million deal. He's looking for that. Will he get it here in Washington? I don't know. Jerome Baker just hit the market. Dolphins just released him yesterday. So a lot of Washington fans went crazy when he was released and said, uh-oh, another guy on the list. He'll be 28 in December. Everything we're looking for, again, 4'5", 40 guy, flat out run, 6'2", not afraid to hit. Not always the most physical guy. Will turn down contact when he sees a pulling guard coming. Will run around blocks sometimes, but he's tremendous in coverage. He plays on the other side of the line of scrimmage. When he sees it and he shoots his gun, he's tough to deal with. There's a lot to like about him. Question is he even considering a place like Washington? I don't think so. I look at him. He came from Ohio State. The Dolphins are winning. I remember how bad he talked about us as if we were the little sisters of the poor last year after they came in here and trashed us. I just don't see him thinking that things have changed all that much after, an offseason of, reshuffling the deck in the front office with ownership and all. I don't think he's going to look at us and say, hey, man, they're doing good things in Washington. He's like, nah, they trash. We beat the brakes off of them and they were garbage. I'm definitely not going to Washington. So I don't see him coming here, is what I'm saying. Here's a name that I think y'all need to really consider strongly. I actually think there's a high probability he ends up here. I'll say that. And I wouldn't be shocked. Now, again, you got to consider if there are other opportunities, and I'd like to think that there are going to be other opportunities. And if there are, and those opportunities trump the one that's here, then you got to think that he's gonna take those other opportunities into consideration and strongly consider those over this one. But at 34 years old in June, Bobby Wagner is a guy that I think you have to consider here in Washington. Those dudes go all the way back to Dan Quinn's second stint, the one where he was the defensive coordinator. He was one of those dudes that helped Bobby Wagner become Bobby Wagner. So there's a relationship there. Now, I think about Wagner being a free agent 2 years ago, and Quinn had a little bit of influence as the D coordinator in Dallas, and it wasn't enough to get Bobby Wagner to come east or south, at least. He just stayed in the division and went to the Rams. It's a little bit different when your guy is the head man in charge, as Quinn is now. At 34 years old, how robust of a market do you really have? I'm hoping, this is what I'm hoping, that we get a combination of 3 and 4, because money shouldn't be that big of an issue. I say that loosely. Everybody wants money, including a 34-year-old linebacker who's 33 currently, will be 34 in June. He still wants to be paid. He's not doing this for free. This isn't charity work. But what I'm hoping, he's still chip chasing. He wants to win, but the man has already won a Super Bowl. But does he want to taste that again? Of course he does. He's a competitor. And that leads me to believe that we might not have enough to offer him. The only way I see Bobby Wagner coming here is if that relationship, number 3, relationships, is that tight with Dan Quinn, and then the opportunities around the league, because they look at him and see he's 33 years old, aren't as great, and he's got to settle for an opportunity. And then, yeah, there's still 3 or 4 teams that are interested, but now we're all on a level playing field. And now the deciding factor becomes, I got a relationship with Dan Quinn. That's my guy. I'm going to go roll with Dan. That's what I'm hoping. Do you know Bobby Wagner had the most tackles in his career this past season? He set a career high at 33 years old. He set a career high in tackles. That's mine. Well, he was 32 for most of the season. He turned 33. Well, wait. He turned 33 before the season. So he was 33 during the season last year. That's insane. It's mind-boggling. He can still play at a high level, bro. No, he's not the same athlete he once was, but he's still mother effing Bobby Wagner. He's a future Hall of Famer. You could do a hell of a lot worse than Bobby Wagner. I'd take him. Because you know Dan Quinn's going to know what to do with him. I don't know if he's going to be willing to come here, though. I wouldn't discount it, and he's 34 years old. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. Another guy from Seattle to take into consideration. Jordan Brooks, former first-round pick of the Seahawks. He'll be 27 in October. Tore his ACL in 2022, at the end of the 2022 season, and was able to make it back to start the 2023 season. It was a remarkable recovery. Boy, what you can do when you're young. So he was able to come back. Wasn't quite the same guy, but he still did some good things. But he wasn't quite the same guy. Now you're hoping, because I always tell you, when you have one of those types of injuries, usually it's not that first year back, it's that next year after that where you start to feel like yourself again. Maybe, just maybe, because, and I use the term down season loosely, because he had a down season. Maybe you get him on the cheap. Maybe he wants a 1-year prove it deal to show everybody he's healthy and then cash in next year. Hey, we're the 1-year deal team over here. So if you're interested in that 1-year deal, that's what we're looking for. That's right up our alley right now. This is the guy that I've been talking about. This is the guy that I see us going after. Frankie Louvu. I've talked about him, so I don't want to bore you with Frankie Louvu conversation because I've done that on multiple shows already. Okay? You already know how I feel about Frankie Louvu. And the reason that Frankie Louvu who will be 28 in September, makes a ton of sense for us. Is he's athletic, he flies around. I mean, when you hear Joe Witt Jr. talk about being fast and violent and fast and physical and flying to the football, I think of Frankie Louvu. Like, he only know one way to play. Frankie Louvu don't have another gear. His shit is stuck in fifth gear. You don't have another gear, right? And he gets after the quarterback. I think Frankie Louvu had, like, how many sacks did Frankie Louvu have this past year? I think over the last 2 years, Frankie Louvu had like 9 sacks, like 5.5 and 4.5. That's 10. I think it was something like that. It might have been 10 sacks over the last couple years. I think he had 4.5 this year and 5.5 last year, if I'm not mistaken. So he gets after the quarterback. So, no, Frankie Louvu had 5.5 sacks this year. He had 7 sacks last year. Okay, 5.5 this past season. The year prior, he had 7. The man had 12.5 sacks over the last 2 seasons. That's the kind of player Dan Quinn's looking for. He talks about backers that can get to the quarterback, guys you can blitz, guys that know how to get to the quarterback. Frankie Louvu knows how to get to the quarterback. He plays fast and physical. He plays violent. And you're not going to have to break the bank for Frankie Louvu, which is why I think he's a tremendous fit here. He's the guy that I think they're going to go after. And I'll be happy about that. And then lastly on this list is Patrick Queen. I've already told you this. I think he's out. He already made it abundantly clear that somebody brought up on socials what the spot rack AVV for him was. And it would have put him in that 4-year, $70 million range or something like that. And he was like, nah, bro, that ain't nearly enough. And so he's already made it clear. He's not going to be the highest paid linebacker. He knows that, but he's trying to get up there. He's trying to get up there. He knows he ain't touching his old running mate, Roquan Smith, who signed a 5-year, $100 million deal, which was what, 20 a year. He ain't touching that. But that ain't going to stop him from trying to sign a 4-year, $75 million deal. That ain't going to stop him from trying to get that. 4 years, $72 million. That ain't going to stop him from trying to get that. But we'll see what he settles for. So I think the deal somebody put online was like 4 years, $67 million. He was like, nah, bro, that ain't nearly enough to get me. So he's getting broken off. Somebody's going to pay him. And I said this already, and I'm going to stick with this. Until otherwise notified, if you from Baltimore, you had success under Mike McDonald, you going to Seattle until you don't go to Seattle. So we'll see what happens. After the signing of Zach Ertz, I've removed tight end from the discussion. Tight end was on the list of items. I told you Noah Fant was the guy that I was interested in. I know you guys saw that the Dolphins signed up the former Tennessee Titan and Atlanta Falcon tight end. So that market was already depressed as is, and it got even, smaller with the Dolphins signing Jonnu Smith. So I just think if they're going to attack tight end at all, which I wouldn't be shocked. I told y'all last year we weren't going to do nothing at tight end, and y'all didn't want to hear the shit. But I told y'all we weren't. I don't know what they're going to do. I still hope that they're open to the idea of adding a tight end in the draft if one falls to them that they like. But again, we only got 9 picks, and you can only do so much with those 9 picks. And if you could cut a corner, tight end is one of those positions with the adding of Zach Ertz, with the addition of Ertz, you can cut that corner now. You don't have to address it in the draft. You can address other pressing needs, which we have plenty of. I think you got to get a running back in the draft. You got to get at least a tackle, if not 2 in the draft. You got to get at least an edge rusher, if not 2 in the draft. You'd like to add a linebacker via the draft. We'll see what they do in free agency. That might be another position that they knock off in free agency, and then we don't look for any in the draft. You could need a safety if you don't address it in free agency. There's so many safeties in free agency. I would like to think they would address it. And then corner. We're going to get to that position here in a bit. So there are other positions that you could see Washington attacking. Wide receiver in the draft. So if tight end is one of those positions that you were really hoping to avoid having to draft, getting Zach Ertz puts you in a position where you don't have to do that. And I know Amani Rodgers has played for us 1 year, but he's almost like a draft pick, so to speak, because he's still so young, so raw, and he's very athletically gifted. He's almost like a draft pick at the position. So anyway, let's go to offensive guards or just interior offensive linemen now. Really, I'm looking for guards because I keep telling y'all, I think center, they're going to at least give Ricky Stromberg an opportunity. And why wouldn't you? Now, they didn't draft him. So that third round capital that was spent on him means absolutely nothing to them. But you got him on a rookie deal for the next 3 years. Why the hell wouldn't you kick the tires and figure out if this guy can play or not? Now, with that said, would you like to have an insurance policy behind him? You damn right you need one. And so that's why I think it wouldn't hurt to get a guy that can play both center and guard. And there's one or two guys in the mix here that are capable. More so a center than a guard, but can play guard, but it gives you an insurance policy in the event that Ricky Stromberg ain't that guy. First guy up is Graham Glasgow from Detroit. He'll be 32 in August. This is a guy that we talked about free agency-wise probably like 2-3 years ago. Feels like. Might have even been last year. I think he came back to Detroit last year on a 1-year deal, played well, started. I could be mixing up my offensive lineman for the Lions, but I feel like we talked about Graham Glasgow just a year or two ago, and we wanted him in free agency. So here we are again, talking about Graham Glasgow, hoping that he's available and wants to come to Washington. Solid guard. We could use one. And again, I think he's a guy that you can get on a 1-year deal, on a 2-year deal, with an option to get out after the first year if you don't like what you see. So he fits what Washington might be looking for. John Simpson, Baltimore Ravens is where he was last year. He'll be 27 in August. He ended up getting drafted, I think, in the 4th round by the Raiders, spent his first few years of his career there, and then went to Baltimore, if I'm not mistaken. Could be wrong about that, but I think he got picked up by the Ravens, played last year there, started just about every game, and played well. So he's a mauler. He was a physical guy coming out of Clemson, not the fleetest of foot, but in a phone booth, he'll bust you up. But if you got speed and quickness, you can do a number on him. But if he gets his hands on you, it could be over. So he'll be one to watch. Coleman Shelton, Los Angeles Rams. He'll be 29 in July. He's one of those dudes. He's a center by trade. That's really his natural position. But he's proven that he can play guard in this league too. And so he's one of those dudes that could be like an insurance policy. You bring him in here and you could start him at guard, but he's really a center. I don't want him starting at guard. Here's the problem with Coleman Shelton. He probably views himself as a starter. So if you're bringing him in here to compete or to potentially be a backup, that might not be a good enough selling point to get him to come here, right? So it's something to consider. Jonah Jackson is a guy that I think a lot of Commanders fans have been eyeballing. Guess what? We're not alone. I've seen Giants fans salivating over this dude, and he's a part of their wish list along with Danielle Hunter. So there's a number of teams, including the Lions, who would love to have Jonah Jackson back. He wants to be paid. So that's probably at the top of his list. And after coming as close as he did to winning the chip last year, I would like to think that he would want to go somewhere that has a chance to win. But when you're an offensive lineman and you got a chance to cash in, you don't cash in. And this might be his best opportunity to cash in. So I think Jonah Jackson might be looking for the biggest payday. It doesn't matter where it's at. Are you willing to pay him? I think Washington should be willing to cough up whatever it takes at the guard position, because you're going to max out at about $17 million per year on a guard. Like, you're not going any higher than that. And most guards you can get for like 12, 13, 14 million dollars a year, 3 years, $42 million type stuff, right? So you should be willing to max out for a guard if one comes available that you really like. And if you got to go to 14 per year, do it for a guard, right? So I think Jonah Jackson's in that mix. John Runyon, I talked about him on a previous show. Green Bay Packer, 27 years old in August. He essentially came in the league and just been playing for the Green Bay Packers pretty much since his rookie season. Got starting experience, has played well. He's a plug-and-play guard. And to take it a step further, he's a plug-and-play left guard. Need I say more? I would be targeting John Runyon in free agency if I were Washington. Okay. Damian Lewis, Seattle, 27 in March. He is a physical presence, a mauler. Another one of these dudes that pretty much stepped in day one starting for Seattle. So he's got a ton of starting experience, physical, a guy that, again, feels like he's plug and play at the guard position. So another guy that I wouldn't be afraid to throw a couple dollars at to try to fortify this offensive line so that you don't have to go in the draft needing to go get guard. You already got Cosme. You add a guard, and then you got a bunch of dudes, that are still on the roster that you can play around with and shuffle around the deck and see what they can do, and kind of see what else you have. But you got to get that other starting guard. Because I keep saying, if you are able to attack free agency and get you one tackle, get you one guard, you got a guard already on the roster, you think you got a center already, then all you need is a tackle in the draft. And boom, you've remade the offensive line just like that. Sounds easy. It's not as easy as it sounds. Okay, clearly. We lost 2 guys off this list already. Again, it's going to be competitive. Ezra Cleveland out of Jacksonville was going to be a guy. Turns 26 in May. Would have been somebody to mention. He's gone, right? He re-signed with Jacksonville. So he's off the list. Kevin Dotson was going to be one of the most highly sought after guards in free agency. I told you, and I said, I don't think he's coming here. I said, either he's going to go back to the Rams or he's going to find a home somewhere where somebody's willing to break him off something proper. Well, he went back to LA. Makes a lot of sense. He played excellent football for them. They weren't going to let him hit the free agent market and find out that he could get more money. And so they locked him up. Good for him. So we lost 2 dudes off this list. Dalton Reisner is an interesting guy because if you remember, we were talking Dalton Reisner last year. And I talked about wanting Dalton Reisner, and I discussed some of the issues he had. I think at the time he was coming from Denver, and, there was some controversy about some of the things he had said and done in the locker room, and he had gotten into it with one of the quarterbacks there. And so it didn't shine favorably on Dalton Reisner. And I was hoping that would depress his market, and it did. And I was like, well, we should go get him then. No, of course we didn't go get him. We settled for, the bums that we ended up bringing in here. And of course, it didn't work out like it always doesn't. And he goes to Minnesota. He was okay. He wasn't great with the Vikings, but he would have been better than anything we were trotting out at right guard and et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, he's available again. Here we are again. Minnesota, 1-year deal, right? The free agent market didn't materialize for him last year like he thought it was going to. I think he could be in a similar spot this year. And he may have to sign another 1-year deal. Hey, we're over here. 1-year deal. The 1-year deal kings are right over here. So he could be an interesting guy. He'll be 29 in July. Keep your eye on Dalton Reisner. And then a guy that I think is going to cost a significant amount. If Kevin Dotson was going to be the guy that cost the most at the guard position, I think Robert Hunt of the Miami Dolphins was going to give him the biggest run for his money. I think the Dolphins would like to have him back. I think he wants to test the market to see what's out there. So the big thing for him is going to be that number one thing. That's money. Like, I ain't worried about a damn thing, a butt getting paid. So whomever comes at him with the best deal, probably going to get Robert Hunt. I'm willing to spend at guard because it's not going to be a whole hell of a lot. It ain't like you paying for a tackle, right? You paying for a guard. That's a different price range. You ain't got to break the bank to pay a guard and make him feel good about what he just walked away with. So open up the wallet, break a guard off. Let's move on. And if that guy's Robert Hunt, I'm all for it, right? So he'll be 28 in August. Just another guy to mention, Mitch Morse was released by the Buffalo Bills. He's up there, though, in age. I didn't write down his age. I forgot to write his age down. But Buffalo just released Mitch Morse. I want to say, because we were just talking about Mitch Morse probably like 2 years ago on the offensive line. And he was older. It felt like he was older then. And he started in Kansas City. Then he was in Buffalo. He's got to be 31, 32 years old. Let's check Mitch Morse's age. He's 31 years old, and he'll be 32 in April. So he's up there, but guess what? And let me just double check this while I'm at it. I might as well double check to make sure, but I feel pretty confident in saying this. Mitch Morse was in Buffalo with O-line Bobby Johnson. So because there's a connection with O-line Bobby Johnson, who's to say that they don't? But again, Mitch Morse is a starting center. You have Ricky Stromberg. And again, Ricky played guard for us too last year, but I think his natural position is center. I don't think Ricky Stromberg is a starting guard in this league. But again, that's not up for us to decide. Shuffle around the deck, and maybe Ricky Stromberg's your starting left guard. Who's to say? You go get a Mitch Morse, you bring him in here, and he's your starting center. Again, Mitch Morse is a starting center. There are teams that need a starting center that are close to winning something. Now, Morse, I think he hasn't won a Super Bowl. He was in Kansas City from 15 to 18, and they got to the AFC Championship game. That was Mahomes' first year in 18, but they lost to Brady. And so he went to Buffalo in 19, and that's when the Chiefs won their first Super Bowl. So he doesn't have a Super Bowl ring. So he's probably chasing a chip at this point of his career. So again, I don't know if the relationship of O-line Bobby Johnson trumps him chasing a chip. So I don't see him here. Anyway, I digress. And then the last category is cornerbacks. I got 14 cornerbacks listed. And this is an interesting group because they could pull one from here. Right now, if you look at our cornerback situation, we only got 2 corners on the roster that are worth a damn. And really, it's just one. And we don't even know if he's any good right now. And that's Emmanuel Forbes. We still got Benjamin St. Juste, but after Juice, you don't have nothing. Kendall Fuller's a free agent. Danny Johnson got cut last year during the season. It ain't no corners. The rest of those dudes are young, dumb, and hungry, and they don't really know what the hell's going on. They didn't impress us when they got their opportunities, especially late in the season. So the only one that I can look at and say, hey, he might have a shot is Tariq Castro Fields, because Adam Peters was a part of the brass that drafted him as a 6th-round pick out of Penn State in San Francisco, but they cut him, and then we picked him up off of their practice squad. So could there still be a connection there? Maybe, but you could argue that we need a corner in free agency, and then we need to go and still double dip and get one in the draft. I would argue you need a boundary corner in free agency, and then this draft is littered with nickels. Go get you a nickel in the draft. Or you could go about it the other way. Go get you a nickel in free agency because they're much cheaper. Go get you the boundary corner in the draft. I think the value in the draft is in the nickel, not the boundary. But again, we'll see. So 14 corners. Michael Davis is the first corner on this list, and he's ultra intriguing because he's a big corner. Michael Davis, I think, is 6'1", 6'2". He's tall, long-limbed, and he's fast as shit. This was an ex-track star. I think he ran a 4.3, 4.40, once upon a time when he was at the combine. He will be 29. He just turned 29 in January, but he can still run. And something else to keep in mind, which is why I think you should not rule out Michael Davis. He spent his entire career with the Chargers, which means what? Our defensive backs coach coached Michael Davis when he was with the Chargers. So Tommy Donatel is our new cornerbacks coach, right? Tommy Donatel is our new defensive backs coach, and he has experience with Michael Davis. And let me tell you this, Michael Davis is a press cover corner who can play man-to-man. That's his shit. He's Benjamin St. Juice with speed. Like Benjamin St. Juice, nobody told him he can't run, right? So in his mind, I'm finna get all up in this man's shit. Jam him up, hem him up at the line of scrimmage. Man, I'm about to be in this man's hip pocket. And then Juice has that fatal flaw. And he didn't realize it until after he gets beat. Like, oh, damn, I forgot. I'm slow. These dudes actually about that life. They can run. Well, Michael Davis can run. And Tommy Donatel coached him in LA and knows he can run. So I don't know if I would discount Michael Davis as a free agent target. Not going to cost you a whole hell of a lot. Can do the things that they did in Dallas. Now, again, they said they're going to play some different shit, but it's all the same. You're going to play some press man. You're going to play some cover three. He can do all of that shit, but his calling card is playing press man coverage. Get in your shit, get in your face, delete the airspace, turn and run with your bitch ass. Locate the football. He can do that. I'm looking at Michael Davis and I'm like, you look like a commander, bro. I'm not saying. I'm just saying, we got relationships. We got an opportunity here for him. I think Michael Davis could be a commander. So we'll see what happens. Rock Yassin was with the Ravens last year. He's 28. He'll be 28 in May. I'm not interested. I've seen him around the league. I've seen him with Vegas. I've seen him with the Colts. Seen him with the Ravens. I've seen him in multiple plays. He doesn't move me. And he's a shorter corner, doesn't have top end speed. I'm good. I'm going to pass. Appreciate it, though. Christian Fulton, former 2nd-round pick out of LSU, will be 26 in September, so he's young, has some pedigree. He's interesting. He can run a little bit. Sub 4.5 40 guy. Not the tallest. I think he's a 5'11 corner, maybe 6 feet. But he's interesting. A young guy that you can kick the tires on. I wouldn't rule out Christian Fulton, right? Jordan Lewis will be 29 in August. Why does that name ring a bell? It should. He's a former Dallas Cowboy. Spent his entire career with Dallas, drafted out of Michigan. Quinn has had him almost his entire career. Knows what Jordan Lewis can and can't do. I wouldn't be shocked to see him reach back and grab a former Cowboy and a guy he might trust. I don't love Jordan Lewis stuff. Of all those Cowboys corners, he was the one that was like, nah, he all right. He all right. But they may like him enough to bring him on board. Here's a very interesting name right here. Akello Witherspoon. I remember really thinking Akello Witherspoon was going to be the shit coming out of, I think he was Colorado. They had a little run at Colorado with these tall, longer-limbed corners. Akello Witherspoon, I think, was first, and then Isaiah Oliver came after him, and I was like, yo, Akello Witherspoon about to be a beast. He was drafted by San Francisco when Adam Peters was there. So there's a connection to Akello Witherspoon. Now, it didn't work out in San Francisco, obviously. And there could be, some hurt feelings there, and maybe he's not the guy. But he just came off of his best season of his career. Like, I think he's starting to figure it out. How to use his length, his speed and athleticism. I think he's figuring it out. And he was outstanding for the Rams last year. He'll be 29 in March. He turns 29 this month. I wouldn't be shocked if Akello Witherspoon, who was on a series of like one-year deals, just trying to find his way in this league. I think he's played his way into a multi-year deal with somebody. But in the event that he doesn't, and that market dries up, and he's out here looking around like, hey, what about me? Hey, what's up, Akello? There's always a place in the league for a 6'3" dude with ball skills that can run. So keep an eye out on Akello Witherspoon and what happens to his market. Sean Murphy Bunting, another intriguing dude. Former second or third round pick of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yeah, you should remember him. He picked off Taylor Heineke in that playoff game against the Bucs in 2020 against us. Got a deal with the Titans in free agency. Didn't really go as well as he hoped. So hence he's on the market again. He'll be 27 in June. He's a rangy corner. I think he's like 6 feet, 6'1", somewhere in that neighborhood. He can run a little bit. He's interesting. I don't love him. I don't hate him. Keyshawn Nixon. He's intriguing. He'll be 27 in June. He just got his first opportunity to play this year with Green Bay. Like, he's been more of a special, like, he's one of those dudes. If you bring him in, he can serve multiple roles. He's one of the best kick return men in the league right now. And he started to get an opportunity to play corner this year. And it felt like they unearthed a gem in Keyshawn Nixon. I think he had like 3 or 4 picks this year, and he was a problem. I wouldn't be shocked. Green Bay usually takes care of their own, so I wouldn't be shocked if they didn't bring him back. But if they don't, he's interesting. He's interesting. Adoree Jackson. He'll be 29 in September. Obviously, he was with the Giants this past year. I'm not really interested in Adoree Jackson, but he's another name. Another guy that can run, play some corner. He was supposed to play the slot this year, and because of injuries, he ended up getting kicked outside. So maybe there's some slot work for him. I don't know, but I'm not interested really. But just another name to throw out there just in case. Here's a name that I am interested in. He felt older to me than what he ultimately ended up being. Kenny Moore II out of Indianapolis. He'll be 29 in August. I've felt like for the last 3 years or so, he has been the premier nickel corner in the NFL. And I felt like in the moment for a very long time, Chris Harris Jr., who was with the Denver Broncos at his peak, he passed that nickel corner baton. Like, bro, you got the juice now. And he passed the baton to Kenny Moore in Indy. And for about a 3-year run, Kenny Moore felt like the best nickel smoking in the league. And the guy right under him was the guy that I wanted in free agency 3 years ago. And that was Mike Hilton. And then he goes to Cincinnati and helps transform that defense. And I was like, damn, that should have been us. Kenny Moore is still that guy. Kenny Moore had like 4 picks last year. Okay. Like, you feel like Kenny Moore is old and he's falling off. Kenny Moore is still eating in Indy. He can blitz. He can play sticky coverage. He's got ball skills. He'll hit you. Kenny Moore is still a premier nickel in this league. And nickels don't cost a lot of money. So you got a decision to make. Do I want to pay a nickel or do I want to go in the draft and get a cost-effective nickel? I got one right here that I know can play. Then I can go in the draft and find one that I'm not sure of, but has all of the tools. The only thing with Kenny Moore is he's going to be 29 in August. Does he fit your timeline? Somebody's going to pay Kenny Moore. I think he's too good of a football player to end up here in Washington. Somebody's going to look at Kenny Moore and say, bro, you available? Well, we trying to win a chip. You come with me. He's going to be a valuable piece for a Buffalo or a San Francisco or a team like that. I just can't see him ending up somewhere like Washington. Doesn't make enough sense to me. I'd love to add a Kenny Moore, though. Stephon Gilmore. Uh-oh. He'll be 34 in September. Can I interest anybody in some Stephon Gilmore? Old Grandpa Gilmore. Anybody interested? The only reason I bring him up, you know why I'm bringing him up. You already know why I'm bringing him up. Dan Quinn, Joe Witt Jr., they're ties. He was there with them last year. He turned it up at the end of that season, but he got his ass cooked in that wild card game against Green Bay. He got his ass roasted, toasted, lied, died to the side, red beans and gravy. Damn, he looked lazy. But he still got Hall of Fame credentials. He still can play a little bit, and they're comfortable with him. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. Hey, Chidobe Awuzie, Cincinnati Bengal, 29 in May. I was gonna say there was a connection to Dallas and Joe Witt Jr. and Dan, but he missed those dudes. He left before they got there, so there's no connection. He's dealt with some injuries. He's interesting when he's healthy, but I don't feel like he's healthy enough personally. So there's that. Kendall Fuller turned 29 in February. We know about what he's capable of. I wouldn't mind having him back, but that's not up for us to decide, obviously. And so we'll see how they feel about Kendall Fuller. We'll see what kind of market develops for him. I think it's a good market out there for Kendall. I told you there's always somebody watching his stuff. And I think Kendall he might be one of those day 1, day 2 guys. Out of the gate, Kendall Fuller's getting a deal from somebody. So that's a name to keep in mind. Darius Williams just got released from Jacksonville. Darius Williams had 4 picks last year. I loved Darius Williams 3 years ago when he was a free agent leaving the Rams. I still think Darius Williams can play. He's an undersized corner. He's like 5'10", but he can run. Obviously, he's got ball skills. He's not afraid to tackle. He'll be 31 in March, though. He'll be 31 this month. I don't know if he necessarily fits what Washington's looking for. And I think there are teams that are a lot closer to winning the Super Bowl than we are that could use a Darius Williams, i.e. a Buffalo. I think a Pittsburgh, teams like that. I think Darius Williams would be a better fit than a place like here. So, and then there's Tre'Davious White. Buffalo, obviously, he just turned 29 in February. But here's the problem with Tre'Davious White: they just cut him. So 3 seasons ago, in 21, he tears the ACL. He comes back at some point in 22. He plays that season. He's playing in 23, and then he ruptures the Achilles. So 2 out of the last 3 years, he's had major surgery. And he's 29 years old. He wasn't the fastest guy to begin with. After the 2 surgeries, he can't be the same dude. And of the 2, he just had the worst one that he could have at this age, which is the Achilles. He's going to have to prove to somebody he's healthy. You know what that means? That's screaming 1-year deal, right? But he's going to have to first prove that he's healthy, and then somebody is going to give him a 1-year deal. Again, that's what we're looking to do. So that's right up our alley, but I don't really see him as a fit here. Again, if he's any good, he's still good enough to help somebody win. And then I've mentioned this guy before, so I'll just mention him again. Jeff Okudah with the Atlanta Falcons this year. 25 years old and just turned 25 in February. Spring chicken, young guy, former top 5 pick in the NFL draft. I would be targeting a guy like Jeff Okudah. If you swear you can coach him up and you think this guy has talent, much like I talked about with Michael Davis, who's a press cover corner, get in your face, delete the airspace, can run. Jeff Okudah can play ball. That's how he was a top 5 pick. Now it's about coaching and getting him back to that level of confidence that he was at. So he's another target, another guy that I don't think you would have to fight teams for. He's off the beaten path a bit. No, nothing wrong with kicking those tires, So anyway, I digress. And then last thing I want to mention is the quarterback position. I talked about and advocated for Washington adding a veteran. If you're going to draft a young guy, you probably would be in your best interest to sign a veteran quarterback, to mentor, to show him the ropes. You don't want the blind leading the blind. You got Sam Howell, who's a puppy himself. You don't want him showing potentially his best friend how to be a quarterback in this league, because he damn sure don't even know how to be a quarterback in this league, his damn self. So I saw a list, like if you're getting Jaden Daniels, an interesting name. There are a couple of them. Tyrod, obviously. If you're bringing in Jaden Daniels, Tyrod would be a great mentor for him. But then there's also the former Baltimore Ravens backup, Tyler Huntley, who's available, who would make another interesting backup quarterback as well, right? Tyrod would probably be the better solution, knows his role, veteran, can definitely show him how to work. But it's the same cast of characters available in free agency that there always is. Okay. Jacoby Brissett, Jameis Winston, Sam Darnold. It's the same dudes that's available every damn year. Same guys. Just recycle them, reshuffle them, and throw them in different destinations. So just thought I'd throw that out there. Anyway, I digress. All right, so that's the free agency. It's a lot of names. I think I'm going to release another video highlighting the guys specifically that I would target for Washington. But I wanted to bring all of the names to the table and why I think these guys make a ton of sense. But I think there are certain ones, and I've kind of laid out the ones that I think are the best fits for Washington. But I'm probably gonna put a video out over the weekend, more likely than not, either Friday or Saturday, that specifically highlights the guys that I would target if I were Washington. Right. So let's get to the comment section so I can get y'all out of here. DMV fan has become a member. DMV fan 123. Stand up. You are the newest member of the MOBB mob. Y'all know what to do. We in the building. Show DMV fan 123 some love. Welcome him with open arms. DMV fan 123, welcome to the squad. Glad to have you, Jason Fios. Been a member for 24 months, that 2-year anniversary. Talk to me, Jason. Talk to me, baby. You the man who writes, what up, Lou? Do you think Peters would start believing his own press clippings and not take a QB at 2 and do something wild like trade down or free agency? So he's been at this a long time. And he's been everywhere he's been, they've won big except San Francisco, and they've been to the Super Bowl twice when he was in San Francisco. All right. They didn't win it, but he started out his career in New England. Of course, they won with Tom Brady. He then went to Denver. They won a Super Bowl there with Peyton Manning. And then he went to San Francisco, and despite not having a quarterback, they went to the Super Bowl. So I say that to say this. He's seen the difference a franchise quarterback makes. He's no dummy. He understands that you can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't have the quarterback, you're not winning nothing. He saw that firsthand. So trust me when I tell you, he's going to try to solve the biggest conundrum that exists for every NFL team, and that is finding your franchise signal caller. The part of the reason that this job was appealing, and I can't stress this enough, is that we had the number 2 overall pick in what was perceived to be a very good quarterback draft class. You're not giving away the number 2 pick to roll the dice on one of these other guys or to pick up more draft capital so you can build the offensive line. That's what free agency is for. That's what the rest of the draft is for. You're going after the quarterback at 2. I've read reports and stuff, and like I said, you believe what you want to believe. I just put this stuff out there so you guys can make an informed decision. But I've read stuff on social media where people have said that teams have called Washington about the number 2 overall pick, and they flat out told them, no, we're not trading the pick. I don't know if that's true or not, but I don't think they're trading the pick. So I tend to believe that. But at the end of the day, part of the allure of this job was the number 2 overall pick and knowing you could try to solve that position right away. Amar, 2 times official. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, I want to take a flyer on Kenneth Murray Jr. He's interesting. If he is in fact a free agent, which I think he is, I haven't seen his name pop up anywhere, but he should be a free agent at this point. Former first-round pick of the Los Angeles Chargers at the linebacker position. He was a stud coming in out of Oklahoma, and he just, for whatever reason, hasn't really worked with the Chargers. Super talented, tons of speed, but hasn't worked out. Again, another one of those guys that Dan Quinn may be able to do wonders with. He'd be an interesting name to consider as well if he is in fact a free agent. I'd have to double check that, but feels like he should be a free agent by now. Feels like this should be his free agent year. So that one would make a ton of sense. It would definitely make sense for Dan Quinn and what he's looking for at the linebacker position. DAV fan 123. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Welcome aboard. Do you see Washington coveting veteran leadership in free agency? I think that's a part of the equation. I don't think that's the end all be all, but I do see them more open to bringing in veterans than the last group was, which is why I had to rewire my brain, because I dealt with young guys only really in free agency the last 4 years under Rivera and company. So to see them go out and get Zach Ertz was sort of a shock to the senses, because we hadn't seen a move like that, other than like Trey Turner and Andrew Norwell, and those guys weren't 33, they were 30. You know, let me not put that on Zach Ertz and say that he's 33. He might be 31. Let me double check. I don't want to be spreading foolishness. Yeah, he's 33, and he'll be 34 in November. So they weren't 33 years old, but I could see them sprinkling in some veterans, and there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. What you got to keep in mind, and what I'm trying to get you open to thinking about, is you're not going to fix every position in the draft. And guys are free agents for a reason. If you're really good as a young player, the team that drafted you or acquired you, they're not going to trade you, or they're not going to just let you walk in free agency. They're going to find a way to keep you if you're that good. So if you're hitting the free agent market, there's some sort of flaw, whether you're an older player, you've got an injury history, or there's some parts of your game that aren't all that great. There's something that's missing that team says, you know what, we can let him walk. And a lot of times it's age. So I think you're going to see us add a veteran or two. More than that, you're going to see us add some guys that have a lot of experience in this league. And I think a lot of those dudes that we add with that veteran experience will be relationship guys. I knew Dan Quinn back in fill in the blank, or I was with Joe Witt Jr. fill in the blank. I knew Cliff Kingsbury fill in the blank. I remember I knew Tommy Donatel since fill in the blank. Like I think it's going to be a number of those guys, right? Video channel. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Washington will be the land of second chances in 24. Busts, castaways, and the underdeveloped come down to DC on this 1-year deal. That's exactly what it's going to look like. And that's what a lot of times, if you look at what the Texans have been doing the last couple of years, that's what they did. When you're doing a rebuild, that's what it looks like. You're willing to kick the tires on a guy that had a ton of talent and build up coming into the league, and it didn't work for whatever reason the last 4 or 5 years. But that didn't change the fact that coming out of college, that this dude was highly regarded and a former first-round pick. King of the Bluegrass, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, sounds like no Charmin Ultra in free agency. I see what you're doing there. I see what you're doing there. You're not going to rope me into that tonight, though. John Perez, my guy, JP, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Writes, I think in addition to a lot of the 1 or 2 year deals, we get a couple of big ticket items. We got the bread. Also heard Washington is staying at 2 and that May is their guy. I mean, nothing you hear right now should be something you run with. It's a lot of noise right now, and it's going to be a lot of noise until we get to April 25th, right? That noise is going to exist all the way up until draft day. So impossible to know where they're leaning or what they're going to ultimately do. But I can tell you this much. I do think we're going to get 1 or 2 big ticket items. It depends on what you consider big ticket items. Yes, I expect that. I told y'all I expect us to sign 2, 3, maybe even 4 guys to substantial deals, right? We've got the money to do it. We've got the cash assets to do it. So it wouldn't shock me. And there's certain positions I'm willing to spend at because, again, what you would spend there versus what you would spend at some of the other premium positions is different. Like guard, I'm willing to go all out at guard because you're not going to spend but so much at the guard position. You're just not. Whereas if you go and you're shopping for a high dollar item, a high ticket item at corner or tackle, you're going to pay. Those aren't cheap. Edge rusher ain't cheap, right? You trying to outbid somebody, you're going to pay some money. You're going to pay top dollar. That ain't happening at guard. You know what I'm saying? So I think there are going to be a couple of exceptions to the rule. Edge rusher is one where I think they might be willing to spend. Guard is another position I think they're going to be willing to spend. I wouldn't be shocked if they were willing to spend a little bit of money at corner. You got to pay to play there. But I can't see them spending on like running back, which is why I didn't include it. They're obviously not spending on tight end with the addition of Zach Ertz. I don't see them spending big at receiver. The only guy, as I mentioned, that I could see them spending a little bread on is Hollywood Brown, but I still don't even see that. Like Cliff Kingsbury would have to really put in a serious word for Hollywood Brown to end up here in Washington, and he'd have to want to come here too, right? So we'll see what happens. As far as May at 2, we'll see. That's the only thing I can tell you. So we'll see. T. Gibbs, thank you for becoming a member of the MOBB. Stand up. You in the building. Y'all know what it is. Show my guy T. Gibbs some love. Welcome him with open arms. T. Gibbs, welcome to the squad. Glad to have you, King of the Bluegrass. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes? Jonathan Grenard and Clowney, and then draft one would be a success at edge. Yeah, I mean, we'll see what they decide to do. And you could do that. Clowney on a 1-year deal, Jonathan Grenard on a 3-year deal, and then draft another edge. You could do that. I don't think that's going to happen. For one, I think Clowney, again, until otherwise notified, every Raven player that had success is going to travel out to the Pacific Northwest to go link up with Mike McDonald. Until that doesn't happen, I'm assuming that it will. So, but Grenard is going to be in play. He'll be in play. Anthony P., thank you for being a member for 20 months. Who writes, we need to do many things. Trust the process. That's what you got to do. You got to trust the process for sure. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for gifting 5 memberships. My guy, Chris, really, truly do appreciate you as always. Thank you for your generosity. My guy, Chris, thank you for blessing those in need of a membership. JP, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, we need to have a real conversation about Washington signing Justin Simmons, who was released this morning, which I did not see coming. There's no conversation to have, JP. I've already talked about this. And you probably made this comment a lot earlier, but I've already discussed Justin Simmons. There's no way in hell he ends up here. I bet every single cent that I own that he doesn't end up a member of this franchise. He's too good of a player. His stock is too high right now. He's still playing at a very high level. And there are too many teams that could use a Justin Simmons. He's a needle mover at this point of his career. And he could be the difference between a team making it to the playoffs, making it to the championship game, or winning a Super Bowl. And with that kind of power, with that kind of production, you don't end up in Washington at this point of your career. Not unless you want to. And who would want to do that? Somebody's going to pay him to play for a really good team. I think he would prioritize that at this point of his career too. Yeah, I want to get paid, and that's going to happen because of my name and what I've done in this league. but I also want to go somewhere where I got a chance to win. He hasn't won shit, Jack Diddley Poo Squat in Denver. So he wants to win too. Video channel. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, if Washington signs Tyrod Taylor, what does that mean for the draft? Jaden Daniels? I mean, that's easy. That's almost stereotyping, right? I mean, it's almost like you putting it in about, we're going to draft this black athletic guy, so let's go get us a black athletic, backup quarterback. You're trying to connect the dots there. I mean, you could draft Drake May and still have Tyrod Taylor as the backup, right? Like, I don't know if that, means you're getting Tyrod. I mean, it feels like you would be leaning in that direction if you were to do that, but doesn't mean that that's what they're doing. I guarantee you this, we would all draw that conclusion now, wouldn't we? If on day 2 of free agency, Washington signs Tyrod Taylor to a 1-year, $12 million deal, you get to $12 million, right? I would assume that most of us was, well, shit, we must be getting Jaden Daniels then now, aren't we? Not necessarily, but I think we would all put those pieces of the puzzle together and we would draw 2 and 2 and say, yeah, that's what 4 looks like right there. You could sign Tyrod Taylor and still draft Drake May, though. You just need a veteran backing him up. That's it, right? So, or you would like one. You don't have to have one. You would like one. I'll say that. Money Shot 217. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, what up, Lou? What's up, Money Shot? I would love to see what DQ and company would do with either Isaiah Simmons or Jeremy Chin. Your thoughts? I would too, especially Chin. I'm more intrigued by him than Isaiah Simmons because there's no question about Chin's desire, effort, or none of that shit. He's a balls to the wall player. He's going to play hard. He's physical. He checks off all the boxes, whereas there are questions about Isaiah Simmons' motor, right? What's his desire? How bad does he want it? And he sounds like one of the dudes that Joe Witt Jr. was talking about when he said this ain't going to be for everybody. Playing here in Washington in this defense on this team ain't for everybody. It sounded like he was talking to guys like Isaiah Simmons. Like, this ain't for you, bro. So I'd love to see what they could do with a guy like Jeremy Chin, though, because he seems like the kind of guy that would fit here. Jerome Foster, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Who writes, Brother Louie, you're schooling us today. You need to get plugged in. You need to get plugged in with Redskins scouts if you're not already. I am not cut out for the scout life. Okay. Them dudes work hard. Not that I don't, but just like Joe Witt Jr. said, this ain't for everybody. The life of a scout ain't for everybody. And I know it ain't for me. I think being a scout is one of those ambitious jobs that you need to start the process of at an early age when you don't have a family. If I started that process right out of college and, no kids, no wife, no responsibility, yeah, I could do it then. But, when you got kids, you got wife, you got, responsibility, I can't be away from my family for 5-6 months at a time. That's crazy talk. And I know they still see their family here and there, but, bro, they be on the road grinding. I'm comfy right here where I'm at talking to y'all. I'm comfortable right here where I'm at talking to y'all. Anyway, I digress, but I appreciate the support. Anyway, that's the last comment. I appreciate y'all checking in with the kid. I gave y'all a lot of information tonight. What you do with it, it's up to you. I'll be back to narrow the focus over the next day or two and give you the guys. And I kind of did that tonight, but I'm going to give it to you in concentrated form over the next 24 to 48 hours. So we'll be back to condense this into a more consumable form, if you will. So I appreciate y'all checking out the kid. Free agency frenzy preview. Lot to take in. A lot of options for the Commanders. I expect them to be very, very busy. And I'm very anxious, as I've told you guys before, I'm very anxious to see what exactly this free agency and this draft looks like for Washington. It'll kind of give us a little bit of insight as to how their minds work and what they're looking for. It won't be the end all be all, because again, when you're rebuilding, or as it's been termed recalibrating, that looks a little bit different than what it's going to look like when you feel like you're an established team and you're trying to win. It's a little bit different. So we'll see. But in any event, y'all know what it is. Post up. Take command. I'll check you guys a little bit later on, probably tomorrow. If not tomorrow, definitely Saturday. I will have. And look, free agency, the tampering period starts Monday, but you might start hearing some shit over the weekend. So this news might be coming at us a lot faster than you think. Anyway, stay tuned. You guys have a good one. Take care. God bless. Good night.